But it was a tough day.
We are live. Thank you, everyone. Today is January 17th, 2012. We are the Goffstown Budget Committee. We are meeting in a pseudo-regularly scheduled meeting. Our final process tonight to get to deliberative session. So what I'd like to do now, Checker, if you can start the roll, and then we'll go towards Lisa, please.
Checker Hansen, Lisa Jukes,
Richard Meany.
Elizabeth DeBrule,
Guy Karen.
Dan Cloutier.
Bill Bates.
Ivan Beliveau.
Brian Lewis.
John Burt.
Hank Boyle.
Scott Bruce.
Phil Kendall.
And I have not heard from Jen Thoreau. And if I count correctly, that'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 votes, and if Jen gets here, there will be 14. Next item on the agenda is our group photo for the annual town report.
Point of order,
Yes.
Hank's not authorized to vote for the school board?
Hank is not here for the school board. Hank,
Oh,
sorry, I
all
should have
right.
mentioned that. Hank is the authorized, what's the secondary person we call? Alternate for the Goffstown Village Water District.
Oh.
Do you have your camera? Okay, well, we'll
I have mine.
whatever it is, we need to
Better, had I remembered.
picture and just go for it. Well, here's what we'll do. While you're doing that, I will ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to make public comment tonight. Seeing none, I can check that off the list. Old business, and what I put down under old business on detail is property tax metrics, rather. Okay, cool, we have cameras. So, let's segue to that for a moment. If everybody wants to gather over here, okay, everybody come on up and gather over here. We'd like to get our photo for the town report. I'm gonna stay seated. You can be in here too, that's part of the scribbing.
Yeah, they always do, right? I have memories of having.
And Jen is in the house. That makes 14.
Want to put another chair in there?
You got
Sure we can.
Not for you.
Or you guys can jump in the middle, I don't care, get down on your knees, who cares?
Want to scooch over and then?
Well, Ivan doesn't have to bow down too far, he's pretty short.
Well, I'm kind of short.
I'll get you in the front.
All right,
We'll put you in a chair in the front.
My whole life of being in the front.
We'll put you in a chair in the front.
in the corner.
What I have.
We, just so that y'all know, we all, yeah, we all have to
You know
get
what
in
I'm
here.
saying?
Come on in.
Well, you're going to get real friendly now. Real friendly. Crunch in. Except for John.
All right.
You just can't be friendly.
Hey, we all say Andrew.
Andrew.
That looked terrible.
I'll take another one.
What specifically?
Is it Bill?
Remember, it's a black and white photo.
That's pretty naff looking, but it's you. What can I say?
Oh, you can't change that.
Feel
Yeah.
free, let's go for it.
Okay, one more.
Say Cabot cheese.
And if you got a real nice one, I'll give you my email address.
We should take one of us all trying to strangle each other.
Right. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody, for your patience.
action photos.
This, one of these will appear in the annual report.
Whose idea was it to do a picture?
We've done them almost every year. The last couple of years, we probably,
We missed it last year, right?
Missed it last year.
I think we messed, it was just way busy and we kinda missed it, so we got the group photo. All right, let's, anybody wanna talk about tax metrics? Okay, if there's no one who was, I mean, what questions do we have? I put that because there was some interest in talking about the metrics. What I did when I sent you the school budget and the town budget, I believe it's called handout 4, maybe? The tab. It, has what I use to calculate the tax rate. So let's go through it for a moment. And if you don't have it electronically, hopefully you may have gotten a chance to print it. It's the same as the handout.
Stand up 4, you said?
Yes.
Okay.
This is on the schools to start with. In the top piece, you say rate per 100,000. This is pretty easy. What we do is we take the assessed valuation. We say, how much is the property in Goffstown worth? Okay, and that's going to support, to pay for the expenses of the school. And that number is the $1,286,019,700. I should have said $1,286,019,700. So when you look at that, you say, okay, the tax rate is done by the thousand. So what we do is I took $100,000 and I just divided it by all that the property's worth in town, and then multiplied it by that 1,000. And that says for every $100,000, it's 7.5628 cents. Now, if you want to say, well, what happens if it's for every $10,000 of appropriation? Well, just move the decimal place one over. And so it would be 0.0075. You see how the metric works? It's just moving the decimal place over. You say, what's it gonna cost if it was only $1,000 or $100 or $10? Just keep moving the decimal place. But we can use it at the 100,000 level because we're talking millions of dollars and make it easy. And so when we look at the request on the handout from the public hearing of Article 3, no, it's Article 2, but that's to, in the first year, they would need to raise and appropriate an additional $364,487 because there's already $344,970 in the bank. So that $364,000, how many hundred thousands is that? Well, it's 3.64487. Just all that. That's right. Very good, Philip. It's 3. I'm gonna go in. It's a school. We can do this. It's, you just, every 100, there are 3.65 of them. So if we took 3.65 and we multiply that times a 7.5628, who can multiply 3.64487 times the rate and come up with how much that's gonna cost as an increase to the tax rate?
And the rate is?
0.075628. And this is where those smart boards or something comes in, and I can see you all do your work, and you hit the button, and, yeah.
0.2756?
2756, about right, so 28 cents. Roughly 28 cents. So if Article 2 passes, that's roughly, just throw it out, 28 cents on the tax rate. And now 28 cents, and so if your house is valued at 200,000 and it's 28 cents per thousand, it's 200 times 28 cents, or about $56. Did I do that right? Did the decimal places go in the right spot? Okay, so you can say if I have a $200,000 house, Article 2 is gonna cost me about $56 a year. That's one way to look at it. That's the metrics. Okay?
$56 the first year.
The first year, that's correct. Now, if the bonding is twice that, because there's 344 and then 364, and that's close to 700 and something. So if it's 700,000 for the payment in the next year, which I don't know if it is or not because it doesn't say in here. I'm just saying the first year payment is $344,970, that's already in the bank, plus $364,487. That would be a little over 700,000. And if it's 7.6 cents for every 100,000, there are 7 of those, and so we're looking at like 50-something cents times a $200,000 house, and then you're looking at something more substantial, somewhere between $110, $120 a year for whatever that. But you gotta look at the bond payment, you gotta look at the payments, because they come down every year because of the interest. Now, one of the other things, we all cool with that? I'm trying to make it easy, not only for us, but also for anybody who happens to be watching, and just trying to just take a couple of minutes. So when we look at the budget to be raised by taxes line. It's line 13 on your spreadsheet.
What's the spreadsheet name, Dan?
I don't remember what I sent it out as.
2012, 2013 BCMS 27. Well, that's the,
That's the workbook,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
MS 27?
MS 27 is the school.
And you're on handout 4.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Although I didn't tell you. They did.
Thank you.
There you go. When we look at the budget raised by taxes, 2011, the far right-hand column that is gray has like 17.5 million. Then you look at the school board budget committee and default budget, and they're hovering 21.4, 21.1, and 21 million. You say, wow, but if you look at that, when we did our work, it didn't go up that much for the total appropriation, or the total operating budget, which is line 10, 36.5 versus 36.9 versus 36.5, 36.2. What's the big difference? The metric is, if you look down, is the estimated and the unreserved fund balance. So if we look at the revenue, the estimated revenue in 2011, you see the 16.6 million, and right now it's hovering somewhere around 15.6, 15.5, somewhere around there. Well, that's within about $1 million. Estimated revenue, when it's higher, reduces your tax rate by the same 7.6 cents, 7.5628 cents. So where's the biggest problem? Well, that's in what they call the unreserved fund balance. The one thing that we only have available to guess is how much do we think we're not gonna spend of the budget that's been handed out, and how much money's gonna come in more than what we think is gonna come in. Well, with all things equal, you would believe that we estimate our revenue based on what we think we're gonna come in at the time that the budget's prepared. So if we think right now, the 2012-2013 school year, this is the middle of January, and by June of 2013, okay, that's 15 months, 17 months from now. This is what we think we're gonna have for revenue for that year. The unreserved fund balance is accumulation of what wasn't spent, plus what monies came in that were unexpected. The $2.3 million that we just did in the tax rate calculation last November had, going from memory, somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000, I think, somewhere around there, of expenses that weren't, so appropriation that was not expended. That money is already been raised by taxes. The tax rate that we're saying right now that we're doing for a budget that's gonna be voted on in March, that appropriation, the money that we wanna spend between July 1 of 2012 and June 30th of 2013 is part of the tax rate calculation. That money is already raised. So, the year before, last year at this time, when we were doing this, there was money that the voters said, this is what I'm gonna give you for appropriation. So that money has already been raised in taxes. It's being raised in taxes right now in the current tax rate. So, when that happens, and you get to the end of June, like we just did last year, you say, how much didn't I spend? And so whatever wasn't spent goes to reduce the tax rate at that same 7.5628 cents. And there was, so for every $100,000, the tax rate goes down. So the number of 2.326 million had to do with money that wasn't spaced, so it wasn't spent, so the money goes to reduce the tax rate, but it also includes money that was received that wasn't expected to be received. Given that, if we look now for the last 2 years, the estimated revenue numbers have been increased from very conservative to conservative, if I can say it that way, okay? They were very conservative so that consistently a lot of money was being actually received than what was being calculated when the tax rate was being calculated. Last November, for instance, when we calculated the tax rate, for the current school year we're in, we believe that the estimated revenue that was projected and the revenue that's going to be collected are identical. And that's why there's only $100,000 in that line that says unreserved fund balance in this current, because this is our projection of the next time we do a tax rate calculation. They're expecting that potentially they're not gonna spend up to $100,000 and return it, and that's the appropriation side. But the revenue side has already been done. But the year before, it was so conservative that they really didn't spend, I think it was close to 600,000, but the balance of it was all additional revenue, and that's the 2.3. So we've lost that difference between the estimated revenue and the real revenue to give back to the taxpayers next time. You got the tax break in a prior year, is really what happens, because when you estimate your taxes high for revenue, what happens? Your tax rate goes down, because revenue reduces the amount of money you have to collect from the taxpayers. Because to support the school, we got money from the taxpayers, get money from other sources. So that revenue, when a tax rate was created last November, the estimated revenue was higher than the conservative point they've been doing before, and there's no current estimate that we're gonna get more money in than reality. Yes, Elizabeth?
Not a question, but part of this, it's mostly unreserved fund balance, but there's also, according to what the school district gave us at that Saturday meeting, it's also about $600,000 less aid from the state and the federal government.
Yes, there's about $1 million.
Oh, is it $1 million?
Well, that one is 600,000.
Okay.
But there's some other little lines in there you can look at and you can measure
Okay.
up, and there's another 400,000 missing.
Okay.
So
So-
in total, the actual revenue that came in the 2010, 2011, no, the actual, I'm looking here, I think it's the estimated revenue. The estimated revenue for the current pay period, let me go grab that. See, tuition, for instance, okay, is the estimated revenue that we're believing is coming in right now, not the actual, but the estimate that we don't believe we're gonna be off from there, was $6.876 million for tuition. That is currently projected in the budget we're looking at now to be 6.5 million. So that's 376,000 right there in tuition difference.
Oh, right.
But that's what, you go to do the numbers, you say this is the amount of students I have, a ton multiplied, you do the MVMS, you do the Goffstown High School, the area agreement, that kind of thing, and you come with those numbers. The adequacy grant looks the same, the school building aid looks the same, there's a lower amount for catastrophic aid, there's another 360,000 for the grant programs, DOE, these are federal,
Federal
200,
programs.
there's all kinds of different numbers.
That's ERA funds?
Yep.
Yep, I don't know if they are or not. Alls I know is we're off somewhere close to that amount.
So this is a combination of a change in the way revenue is being projected and a reduction in state and federal revenue that's coming to the school district.
Yes.
Not increased spending.
If we look at
It's very little.
if we look at the spending increase, it is tiny
It's tiny.
in comparative numbers.
And now, also, I wasn't on the budget committee, obviously, this is my first year, but I had heard someone say that the change in the way the revenues were projected was done at the request of the budget committee and the school board.
I can say the budget committee. I don't know if the school board asked for them to be, Jen would answer that question. I think I heard some
It would have been
conversation
several
saying,
years ago.
it was a number of years ago, and this has been like 2 or 3 years. And we are now at the final turnover, if you
So
want
the,
to
so
say
the
it.
budget, I'm saying, this isn't something that just came out of nowhere. The budget committee asked for this, and this is,
That's what they gave us on the 8th.
If, for instance, the projection of revenue last year for the current year budget had been $1 million less,
It should be a minus.
then your tax rate would have been higher by $1 million, and that's 10 hundred thousands. So your tax rate would have been higher by, what, another 76 cents. Okay, so on a $200,000 home, you would have paid another $152. If they had projected it that way last year. So the tax rate that was just set back in November could have been 75 cents higher if they would have consistently been estimating the revenue at $1 million less.
okay.
But there's been a difference between the estimated revenue and the real revenue every year. And so if you always do it that way, then there's never a change. But at some point in time, so the tax rate has been artificially been up here. The tax rate in November, because the estimated revenue was projected at actual, ends up meaning that the tax rate in the following year gets affected. Because you don't have the return of taxes in the following year, you got the return of taxes this year.
So just to clarify, this is a one-time adjustment, and if taxes go up next year, it'll be because spending goes up.
Most
Well,
likely, unless there are
there's
some.
huge
given-
change on the
right.
revenue side that we don't
Given-
know about now.
Yes. Given the statistics of revenue in their sources, if that stays constant for the 2013-2014 school year, tax rates shouldn't go up unless it's on the appropriation side, not the revenue side.
Okay.
This is a revenue adjustment. First, I gotta go to Philip, because he had his hand up first, then I'm gonna come back to Lisa.
Sorry. I'm just looking at your handout 4.
Yes.
On this unreserved fund balance. I'm not gonna ask the questions about, I've been there, done that. But I'm looking at your formula here, and what you have for 2012, 2013 is all a positive $100,000. But 2011, you have it as a negative 2.3 million.
Yeah, so.
Should
does-
not those 100,000s be negatives?
Let me look at some B10 to B12. Yes, that should be a negative. Good catch. So go ahead, everybody who has,
You just lowered the tax rate by
you just lowered the tax rate. How much did you lower the tax rate by?
7.7.
No.
No.
15, 16 cents,
it's a
because you
double.
gotta do it twice. Good catch. So let's do that.
You're welcome.
Where are you? Thank you.
It would have all worked out anyways. On the
Right.
unreserved fund balance,
What handout was it?
It's
Handout 4, I
handout
guess it
4.
is.
If you have the handout from the public hearing, I inadvertently forgot to put a minus sign in front of the 100,000. So in essence, what the formula was doing was charging you 100,000 instead of giving you credit for not spending 100,000.
so basically saying we were 100,000 in the hole.
Well, we aren't anymore. So I don't know what I can look at it, but that was a good catch. So what's it look like now? Well, the projected would be 1609 for the school board, 1587 for the budget committee, and 1577 for the default. The rate change for the effect on a 220,000 could be somewhere between $558 or $494, somewhere in between there, which is a little different. I think someone had mentioned that to me, and it just didn't remember.
give my credit away.
Lisa?
No, I was just gonna say, to follow up on Elizabeth's comment, I mean, I think I would just caution anybody from saying, you know, the tax rate's not gonna be, you know, going up based on if revenues don't change. And from what I've seen with federal and state, you know, cuts to education, I would have to think that, you know, next year we were gonna see even more, reductions in spending on education in particular, which would make our revenues go down for the school district. So I guess I would just throw that out there as a comment.
Okay. Yeah, I would not want to say that the budget wouldn't go up. It's the way it's saying. So if there are,
That revenues are gonna stay
with status
constant.
quo, if revenues stay constant and appropriations stay constant, then there's no change in tax rate.
I guess I just wouldn't say that revenues will stay constant.
Hang on. So if revenues are reduced, tax rate could go up. Could go up. Because the whole point of the whole metrics here is to understand the whole concept that it's both revenue and appropriation. This committee deals with appropriation only. Okay, we get our revenue, the revenue projections are done with the blessing of the school board, with the blessing of the selectmen. That's where they're done, and they usually hand them off to us. Is there any further comment on the metrics or anything? Excellent. Let's cross 4 off the list, and let us go to making motions on the village district. Let me get those numbers up. And Hank, I haven't seen the MS 37. I didn't calculate it because the detail I got from Dick, the budget that was on that sheet didn't balance to what I had for what the budget was passed by this committee last year. It was the year before, so it looks like they took the spreadsheet, put down the fiscal 2012 budget, but didn't update the prior year's budget to reflect 2011. It still looks like 2010's budget.
Could be, Dan. The only thing I know about that, I was down there today, she's working on them, and I had to go to the bank to get the interest on some of the savings certificates, because they won't release them till the end of the month, but I got them today, so she's working on it. Should be done by the end of the week.
Okay. But that doesn't stop us from looking at the number. The request was $707,892. And the question I have for you is, are there any further modifications, or we can go right into a motion to adopt that number to go to their annual meeting?
As far as I know, today, this is it.
Okay? Philip?
I make a motion to adopt the last number we had.
707,892. Is there a second? Hank? There's a motion on the floor to adopt $707,892 to go to the Goffstown Village Water Precinct annual meeting. Any discussion? Phil?
It's a budget that's raised by user fees.
Hank?
Oh, he said it, no tax impact at all.
Anybody else? Seeing none, give me a moment while I get my, let me just ask, all those in favor of sending that to their public hearing or their meeting, signify by raising your hand. Opposed and abstained. Scott and Elizabeth abstain, all others, that's 12-02. And does Scott or Elizabeth want to read anything into the record?
Nope.
Okay. Now, what I need is a motion to either recommend or not recommend $707,892.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, which one?
Recommend.
Okay. Phil, are you still good on the second for recommend? Okay.
I was waiting for you to ask that question.
to recommend. Does anybody want to talk to your motion? Second?
No.
Anybody else? Okay, those in favor of recommending 707-892 to their annual meeting, please signify by raising your hand. And opposed and abstained. Okay, same thing, 1202, and no. Okay. Takes care of that. So, let us look at the school budget. I sent you the electronic version of the MS-27. The MS-27 has a number, now the MS-27, by the way, has the school board's appropriation as they delivered it to us, and they did not meet last night. You guys, Jen, did not do any discussion, adopting whatever the budget committee did so far, or anything of that nature? Okay. So, right now, the budget committee has $36,477,003 for a total budget. And the question I have is, are there any further motions on the budget?
Dan, just,
Yes, Phil.
what are you looking at when you're making, I missed that, I apologize, I guess.
I was looking at the total, the MS-27 tab, line 61, column H, which happens to look exactly like the handout, page 7.
And could I just repeat the number one more time, just to make sure?
36,477,003.
Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no, yes, John?
Point of order? Could you tell me what this year's current budget is? Is it the 36,460?
I believe it is 36,460, 268, yes. The change is the last column, which is $16,735.
See that column?
So this, if I can further on point of order? So the budget, the actual operating budget's only going up $16,000.
$16,735, the appropriation.
Well, where's the 22% increase that they're looking to get?
That was our discussion between 7:00
Okay.
That's
and
the revenue side, John. It's going down.
Appropriation stayed the same, but they're not bringing in as much money from other sources, so they have to make up the difference in the, by the tax, through taxes.
Okay.
Okay, so let me get to my, all right, is there someone, there are no motions, do I have someone that would like to make a motion to bring 36,477,003 to the school deliberative session?
So moved.
Philip, and do I, second by Elizabeth, do you want to talk to that one?
I think we spent plenty of time doing that already.
This is not a recommend or not recommend.
Not yet.
Okay.
This is just to find out what number we are gonna bring. And that's 36,477,003 is the motion. And did you wanna say anything, Elizabeth? Anybody else wanna say anything about that? Okay, then I could take a vote. All those in favor of bringing 36,477,003 to deliberative session, please signify by raising your hand. I got you. And those opposed? And if you, okay, Guy, John, Ivan, and Bill. Let me mark that. Guy, Ivan, John, and Bill. Were there any abstentions? Everybody else said yes, okay. One, Dan, Brian, Checker, Dick, Elizabeth. It's not Dick, it's Hank. Jen said yes. Lisa, Philip, Richard, and Scott. Okay, that's 10-4, motion passes. I now need a motion to either recommend or not recommend that. Guy?
Motion to not recommend $36,477,003.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That would be Ivan. Do you want to talk to your not recommend?
Yeah.
You want to talk to your second?
To recommend the school budget.
I just have a huge concern about the increase. Period.
Anybody else? Philip? And then I'll come back to Guy.
I think the school board has done a decent job, as well as we have as well, to keep the operating budget within $16,000. Because of revenues not coming in, some of which is not within their control, I think it's inappropriate of us to not recommend a budget that, with our efforts and their efforts, have been within $16,000 of last year's operating budget.
Guy?
Thank you. I understand what you're saying, Phil. The flaw in your argument is that the revenues are coming in. The difference is, they're not coming from outside source. Now they're gonna come out of everybody's pockets in town to make this up. I can't, with that big of a tax increase, there's no way I'm gonna recommend this. Because the school is gonna see the revenues just coming from a different place, your wallet and my wallet and everybody else's. And it's gonna be a big impact at the wrong time.
I get a personal, and then I have Scott on here.
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Scott,
There you go.
I'm
Oh, you go.
gonna
Oh,
make a
sorry.
personal comment.
Okay.
What we're looking at is an adjustment made to revenue, and the way I'm looking at it is that 75 cents or whatever we were talking about earlier should have happened last November. Had all things equal, your taxes should have gone up last November. They didn't. Many went down, some went up a little bit, so we're actually getting the benefit of not having had that tax increase for a year. Appropriations are appropriations. This is a revenue adjustment, the way I'm looking at it. Scott?
I'd like to just share what you just, echo what you just stated. It is a $16,000 roughly more than last year's budget. And I think I just want to remind everybody that even though that it's $16,000 more than last year's budget, according to the presentation that we got from the school district, they had to absorb $171,000 in increased oil and propane costs within that budget. They had to absorb $463,595 in increased health insurance costs. They had to absorb almost $220,000 increase in technology, furniture, and equipment, and there was also a substantial amount in retirement that they had to absorb. And they did all of that, and the budget went up $16,000, which means that they cut in a lot of other areas so that it would only be $16,000. And I think, as the chair stated, this is largely attributable to a decrease in the revenue, and let's hope that some unanticipated revenues come in that will offset this, which they have in the last couple of years.
I've got Bill, Ivan, Elizabeth, Guy, and Dan on the list. Bill?
Yes, I just want to say, certainly I'm not taking away from the fact that the board went into this, Scott, as you said, making some choices and trying to make some adjustments. And certainly, to the extent that we did already, that the budget committee made some adjustments downward that impact the budget amount that's going forward. But again, you can't separate the revenue side from the appropriation side. So to say we did all this, but taxes are gonna go up, and we should just hope that unanticipated revenues come in, that's not the way to run the town. You have to account for that, and you have to make hard decisions and manage to the revenues you have, that you're going to get to live off of. And the only reason why I'm saying this is in the economy we're in, it's unconscionable that we wouldn't give it more thought about the burden we're passing to the taxpayer who's stressed already. It's unconscionable. There's people living paycheck to paycheck. There's people who would have liked to have gone to town meeting the other night or deliberations that I know of that couldn't go to give their peace of mind because they're working 2 jobs and they're working at night and they're working paycheck to paycheck. So I'm not taking away from the fact that the school board worked very hard this year to manage a tough situation. And perhaps we did a little bit to cut that down as well, but we're still not to the finish line. The job's not finished, and unfortunately, we're getting ready to pass a pretty big burden to a very stressed taxpayer, and that really worries me, and I can't recommend that. I hear from people all the time, and I just can't do that.
Ivan?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Bill said, for sure. And for me, what's disturbing is we have, on the numbers, 220,000 assessment and this large increase. The average tax, I've asked people in town what the average tax is, and it's about $6,000 per household. And that means that the average evaluation is probably closer to $300,000. So we're going to see some big increases. And if this trend continues, and this is the concern that I have, that the budget has gone up starting in 2001 from 21 to 24 to 26, 27, 29, 32. There's been some tremendous increases. These are just numbers from the town report. These are actual numbers. And you say, well, the students have gone up, numbers of students. So if you take a look at the average cost per student, and yes, it's not adjusted for non-education expenses. We've got 2 or 3 million non-education expenses. But if you just take the gross budget and divide it by the number of students, it goes from 2,000, 7,500, 8,500, 92, 10, 10, 7, 11, and we're up to 13,000 per student, gross numbers. So we're doubling now every 10 years. And you can argue that, gee, it doesn't show up in the tax rate because it's been upshifted. We've had that long discussion about downshifting and upshifting. 45% of the school budget has been upshifted. We get a change in those revenues, we're going to get some dramatic shifts. But if we return to these trends, which and anyone can see these, I mean, these just come off the town report. One problem I have is I moved to Goffstown in 1969, so I've been here 43 years, and I've seen some interesting trends. And when I came here, the school budget, the entire town budget, was under 2 million. And the average cost per student was tremendously lower. It was only $100 per student. And inflation is in there for sure. But this trend means that we're looking at this decade, conceivably, of seeing an average property tax of something of $12,000 per household, average household. And the third part, the last part, I think that's really bothersome. If you go and look at effectiveness of education, this gets talked about all the time, and if you compare us with other nations, for instance, there's an Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, that looks at education costs around the world. And you can print that data out. And they compare data from about 35 nations. And we're right up there at the top for costs per student for education. And the average results compared to 35 nations around the world is that we're at the bottom. And it makes me wonder and question how we really effectively spending our dollars. So those 3 points bother me.
Thank you, Arvid. Elizabeth?
Yeah, I have a couple points too. On the revenue side, you know, this was a change that the budget committee requested. And to now basically penalize the school board, or the school district for this change seems hypocritical to me. On the appropriations side, the schools have already done a phenomenal amount of belt tightening in the last few years. Remember, they've been at or below default for, I think, 3 years running, if not 4. I'd have to check the numbers on that. But, and I don't think that you can make big cuts without having some serious repercussions on the quality of education, which I do not want to see. And I think people, I mean, yeah, I'm not happy about paying more money either. I mean, I'm looking at, maybe a $500 increase to my tax bill. But, my son went to the Villa, where he did not get as good of an education as he's getting at Maple Ave. And that's what I was paying per month for him to go there. I don't want to see Goffstown schools get to the point where they are not providing a quality education, and I have to go to a private school and pay that kind of money 10 times over in a year. I think that this could, I think if we wanted to really cut this down and not have a tax increase, we would be setting off a domino effect that we might not be able to stop. And the Goffstown schools have come too far in the past few years to take a step back like this.
Guy?
Your comment about the Villa, every parent I know who's got kids over there would vehemently disagree with what you say about the quality of education there. But there's been a statement made here,
Point of
excuse me.
order.
Thank you. The taxes should have gone up last year. This is revenue related. I don't think taxes should have gone up. Spending should have been cut last year. We have two choices. Make the taxpayers pay this, or start being proactive in cutting the spending. Where in blazes is the pay to play? Why do we still have all the administrators we tried to reduce last year? There are other ways, rather than holding a gun to the taxpayers' heads, to make up for this loss of revenue, other than taking it out of their pockets. This budget, it's still an increase. I didn't see this thing go down. Nobody on the school side tried to cut this thing. What they did was reduce all the nice things they wanted to have and not ask for so many of them. How about giving up some of the things you do have? Because we're all going to pay for it.
I have a personal comment on the list. I'm going to bring it to reality for us, because we already got a number to send to deliberative. We're going to either recommend it or not recommend it. I hope we get a vote to do that. If this number 36,477,003 is voted by the public, if it makes it that far, okay, but on the ballot, you've got the default budget of 36,182,164. The difference between the number that this committee just voted to bring to deliberative and that default number is $294,839. The reality. That, if the default budget were to pass, that would be a 22.3 cents roughly less of a tax rate because of the appropriation being reduced. The effect on a $220,000 home is roughly $49 for the year. So in my mind, that's what I'm looking at, is that $49 to go to a default budget versus what we've done. I've got Phil on the list. You're the last one I currently have on my list.
I have 3 points, and I'll try and make them as quickly as I can. First, I want to thank Guy for clarifying my statement about revenues. I meant to say outside revenues, not by taxes. I also want to say, if we're going to come to this night with a motion of not recommend, why did we spend so many nights trying to adjust the budget in front of us when we had the revenues, knowing that there was going to be a lack of revenues? I'm just going to let that one float out there. And the last thing I have to say is, I've heard this statement about how taxes are going to double every 10 years. Well, I've been in town for 14 years, not as many as you. But in 2001, my taxes were around $4,300. This past year, they're $6,400. It's a $2,100 increase in 10 years. That's not double. If it was a doubling, that would have been $8,600. However, when I moved in, my taxes were $4,700 back in 1997. And in 2001, 4 years later, they actually dropped $500. So we can't say that every 10 years our taxes are gonna double, because there's a lot of factors that change in there. But I can say for sure, in the last 10 years, my taxes have not doubled, they've only gone up $2,100.
Okay, I have Ivan, Guy, and Dan on the list. Ivan?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that statement, and I agree. Because so much of this, the budgets have gone up at these rates, and the property tax has not, because these costs have been upshifted. It's been upshifted to the state, it's been upshifted to federal. We still pay those. You don't get something for nothing. The state has added dozens of new taxes. There's no free lunch. And it's not easy to grasp this inflation idea, but when the federal government pays and sends all this money down, we still get to pay for it. We get to pay for it with increased prices of electricity and road salt due to inflation, or we borrow money. And if all of those get downshifted to the town, then our property taxes will double because the budgets have doubled.
We're not talking about that, we're talking about actuals.
Okay, then I also have Elizabeth and Scott. Guy? Dan, Elizabeth, Scott.
Real quick, answer to your comment, Phil. Why, we're gonna not recommend this, why did we spend the time doing this? Because it's not enough of a reduction, would be my answer. I can't recommend that. Two, I don't know about the rest of you, but I didn't know what the tax rate was until I walked into a public hearing on Wednesday. I don't think any of us did. We knew there was gonna be an adjustment in revenue, but we didn't know what it was. I didn't.
They gave it to us at the
It's,
presentation.
Okay, when we deliberated, we didn't know what the tax impact was gonna be.
We're in a debate mode, so.
And third, since 2004, in 8 years, my taxes have gone up over 50%.
All right, I have Dan, Elizabeth, Scott, and John on the list, and that was important because I'm calling the question. Is there a second?
Second.
I heard Guy. Those in favor of calling the question, please signify by raising your hand. And opposed? And there were no abstentions. John was the only opposed. Everybody else was yes. And according to the rules, I have no comment because I made the call. So we got Elizabeth, Scott, and John. Elizabeth?
I was gonna call the question.
Okay, then we don't have to do that. Scott?
Yeah, I was just gonna, again, I thought, when the school district did their presentation, it was, I even asked the question at the end of the, towards the end of the session, and I asked Ray specifically about the net impact to the local taxpayer, because it was like $2 to $3 million more than the previous year. And right then and there, I knew that we were gonna be looking at a substantial increase in the taxes by virtue of the revenue impact. And Guy, I don't think you were at that.
I've seen it, though.
Okay. But, the one thing that, I don't think anybody likes to see their taxes go up. I mean, especially in economic conditions that we've been experiencing over the last 4 or 5 years. However, in the last 4 or 5 years, for the vast majority of Goffstown taxpayers, their tax bills have been relatively flat. And I challenge I'm telling you, 80 to 90% of you, it's been relatively flat. Go ahead and take a look. And a lot of people think that it's been going up a couple $100 a year. And I remember I had a little friendly bet with a friend of mine, and he lost that bet as I pulled his records for him. But the interesting thing that I also look at is that when you look at, the push and pull between, the budget committee and the governing boards, overall, I think we're both doing a pretty darn good job. I mean, if you look at what that presentation said, we're like one of the 5 lowest districts in terms of what we spend per pupil, comparing apples to apples, but yet we're getting a pretty darn good byproduct from the quality of education that we're giving our students. So but I think we're at that cusp of, we really can't go much further with these cuts. Guy, I'm with you on the pay-to-play and some other things, I really am, but it just hasn't happened. But I think that overall, the Budget Committee, over the years, has done a good job, and we've been able to keep things in check. But in this particular one, I will recommend this particular number.
John, you have the final?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When it comes to the villa, I just want to state that my stepson went there, and when he did go to
Well,
the
I think there was a point of order someone already did, that we shouldn't be talking specifically about something that's not part of the budget.
All right.
I should have caught that earlier, but
I have a newspaper article here that states Candia Community approves level-funded school budget. I just want to read just a couple paragraphs out of it.
and you're gonna tie it around to this budget,
Yes,
okay?
I am. Despite pleas from residents to increase funding, the Budget Committee Thursday night approved reductions of $2,173 to its proposed budget to level fund it with the current operating budget heading into the school deliberative session. Why I'm gonna support Guy's motion is what the selectman Amanda Soar said. She said, when decisions need to be made that could affect the town taxes, all residents need to be considered. We have a high population of people without kids and seniors, Soar said. To not think of their needs is selfish. And I just feel that this, well, I know, I don't feel, I know that this budget is gonna hurt the taxpayers of Goffstown. Is it gonna hurt the ones that have nice jobs up to St. A's or other areas, or?
Point of order. That's derogatory.
Well, I'm just stating, some of us have nice paying jobs.
And you can say it that way.
Okay, I'll say that. But there's a lot of people that don't, and those are the people that live across an old lady from me, and she says, John, if my taxes go up, I don't know what to do. You know, what do I tell her when I go home tomorrow, or tonight, and I see her tomorrow? You know, what do I tell her? You know, I'm sorry, your taxes are gonna go up $400. Yeah, it really bothers me that, you know, we're at this point, and I think we're doing a very big disservice to the taxpayers of Goffstown, and I think they deserve a lot better. Thank you.
There's a motion on the floor to not recommend the 36,477,003. Should this pass, we will go on to the next article. If it does not pass, the only alternative is to make a motion to recommend. Do we understand? So I'm gonna take a vote right now. Yes, Phil?
Just to clarify, voting yes to this motion means you do not recommend.
Voting yes to this motion would mean the Budget Committee would send the words "not recommended" by the Budget Committee to deliberative session.
Not recommend our own budget.
That would be correct. That's what voting yes would say. Voting no is the opposite. You all understand the question? Those in favor of the motion to not recommend, please signify by raising your hand. Okay, hang on. I've got Bill, I've got Guy, Ivan, John, and Richard. Thank you. Those voting no, please signify by raising your hand. I've got Dan, Elizabeth, Lisa, Checker, Brian, Jen, Hank, Philip, and Scott. Motion fails 5-9. The only thing I need now is for someone to make a motion to recommend.
Motion to recommend.
And I need a second.
Second.
Is that Elizabeth? Do you want to speak to your motion?
No.
Do you want to speak to your second?
Can I call the motion?
One comment.
If you're on my list,
Oh,
which you
Guy's
are
gonna do it. I'll
now.
let him do it.
Guy?
Something I just forgot to mention real quick, talking about property taxes in Goffstown. You guys realize that there are 2,000 fewer registered voters this year in Goffstown than there were last year? Wonder where the hell they all went.
We purged the checklist.
College.
College, or they're dead?
We're swaying away from the motion,
That was it.
and you're baiting me
Purged.
to give you an answer, which I will do after the vote.
Yeah, he knows this.
Come on, bait him again, Guy, come on.
Are there any further comments? Then the motion before you is to recommend. Those in favor of recommend, please signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? And that is exactly opposite from the prior vote. And so it passes 9-5. Those in favor were Dan, Brian, Checker, Hank, Elizabeth, Jen, Lisa, Philip, and Scott. Opposed was Bill, Guy, Ivan, John, and Richard.
Did you get Hank?
Yes. Jen was in favor of the recommend. Okay, now, there is usually, I have, like, the final articles, but the way the month is progressing, the school board is not meeting until next Monday, and so I don't have the final drafts, but I have the articles in, well, it's only the wording that might need to be smithed by DRA and stuff.
Point of order, did you want me to give my report before we enter into this, or do you want me to wait?
Which report would it be?
Remember I told you I had my meeting with Stacy and Randy because I'm the SAU rep, and they gave me some information about the articles?
Okay, well, hang on for a second.
Okay.
I think we'll do that first. After I tell Guy why the checklist happens to be, last year ran a purge, which means anybody who was on the checklist who did not vote in the last 4 years were sent letters and said, hey, by the way, you haven't voted in the last 4 years. If you want to re-register, re-register. If the letters come back as undeliverable and stuff, then you're off the checklist, actually. Let me rephrase that. Anyone who didn't vote in the last 4 years, names came off the checklist. And then you would had to re-register to get back on. And that's likely where the 2,000 voters came from. So it's a lot cleaner. Statewide, it was between 100 and 200,000 names. Hank?
Could I make a comment on your comment?
Sure.
There were several people at the polls that were upset because they had been removed, and they were really, really upset because they wanted to vote, but they hadn't voted in 8 years.
Yeah, and luckily for us in New Hampshire, all they had to do was go see the
Register.
supervisor's checklist,
registered.
register to vote, and go get a ballot.
Is that a state RSA? If you don't vote
Yes.
in 4 years, you're gone?
Yes,
Yep.
Sorry.
you're off the checklist.
Oh, you're off the
It's
checklist.
called a 10-year purge. John?
Mr. Chairman, and for the record, I worked at the polls, had a great time, and I believe no dead people voted here in Goffstown like Manchester and Nashua.
There was some-
Well, that's why we dropped the numbers.
Yes. No, everybody that voted here was alive.
Okay. Excellent. Okay,
Thank
now,
you for that answer. Now we move to the next item.
there are draft Article 2 and draft Article 3. One is a warrant for the Bartlett and Maple Ave Elementary Schools. The other one is for the Goffstown High School for a couple of things. Take it away, Elizabeth.
This was just in my regular monthly meeting with Stacy and Ray at the school board. We talked about this for a little bit. First of all, there's gonna be no contract for teacher or support staff this year. That will not be on the ballot. They could not reach an agreement, so there's no step and there's no cost of living increase. Everything stays flat. As far as the Bartlett and the Maple Ave thing goes, I don't have anything to say. They didn't tell me anything about the track and the high school thing. But the Bartlett and Maple Ave extension, they're a little concerned because moving through the planning process apparently is a plan to build an apartment building with 48 units in Penardville. And they said the sort of rule of thumb is that I think they're 2-bedroom units. They were not positive, but they thought they were 2-bedroom units. They are. They are, okay. For every 2-bedroom unit, you should figure on 0.6 children, which would mean 30 new kids. Now, the Abington Square development, which they also use that formula to calculate, it turned out to be 2.6 children per unit. So they're in a little bit of a panic because they're just flat out is nowhere to put them at Bartlett. They're gonna have to have portables, but I guess there's some question about there's no land to put the portables on. And this is coming no matter what happens with this warrant article, if this thing passes, because the way the warrant article, they explained it to me, would be that their construction would start this summer on Maple Ave. Then they would spend the year finishing the Maple Ave addition, and then the following year, they would move half the kids from Bartlett to Maple Ave, because the kids can't be in that section of Bartlett when they have to knock it down.
And there's some additional information from someone who's actually on the elementary school building committee?
17 different names.
Okay, cool.
That
18
is
now.
one option that we're looking at. I mean, it's not a definite option, but that's
Oh.
realistic, is that what you said. The kids can't be there while the work is being done, so we're trying to phase where the kids would be. Has not been finalized as to what happens, but that is definitely the one that we're leaning towards.
Well, they're concerned because if everything goes as it's planned, the apartment building's gonna be done way before the addition would be done, even if the addition got approved this year. So they're in a little bit of a quandary. That was it. Oh, there's $344,000 in the Bartlett Capital Reserve Fund.
According to the article, $344,970.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I have
sir.
a couple questions for Elizabeth.
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
You can try.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious, you said there's this coming year, school year, there'll be no steps or
Cost of living increase.
cost of living, so there's
For
no raise.
staff or teachers.
So they'll stay, if
That
they're
was my
making.
understanding. Everybody stays exactly where they are.
All right. Who's gonna pick up the additional health insurance cost? I'm assuming healthcare always goes up, so, do you know that?
I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
comfortable
I
speaking on that because I don't have any
believe
idea.
it's
Okay,
in
thank you.
the increase for benefits is gross appropriated in the budget that we passed, from my recollection.
Okay.
They talked about increases, and so I'm sure there's some in there. Yes, Ivan?
Just a comment, one possibility is there are 2 charter schools opening in the greater Manchester area in September, neither of which have stated their location. Those contracts haven't been signed, but they're definitely September 1st, 2 charter schools. They will be free to the public, and the state of New Hampshire is also looking at a voucher system that will be coming up, and there's a couple more programs to, the state would say, introduce competition into the system, but the 2 charter schools in the greater Manchester area will presumably take a lot of students, and the early indication is they're going to a lottery system. There's huge competition to get into these schools, and they will be free. So conceivably, that could be a safety valve to absorb students.
One item I need to make mention is the recommendations we give tonight, whether to recommend or not recommend, stick all the way to the ballot if there are no modifications made to these articles. Okay, so for instance, at the deliberative session. So we send this to the deliberative session, and if the voters who are in attendance at the deliberative session don't make any modifications to the amount, or to the article, 36-477-003, and if that survives and goes to the ballot, then to recommend that we voted 9-5 with that number will survive to the ballot. Okay? And that goes to play for every article we do tonight. Further comments on the Article 2, the elementary school bond? Yes, Lisa?
I guess I would just add, that, you know, irregardless of the 48 units that are being proposed, I don't know how many of the people sitting around this table have been in Bartlett Elementary School. I was the liaison there for the budget committee this year. That school is busting at the seams. And, you know, I don't know about charter schools or vouchers, so I can't really speak to that, but I guess I would say there's gonna be a percentage of kids that are gonna have to utilize Bartlett. And it needs some work. If we don't do this now, we're gonna have to, this has to get done. That's not okay.
We're kind of getting some of the debate done prior to making the
Oh, I'm
motion, but that's,
sorry,
no,
we're
no,
not
no,
supposed
that's
to do
okay.
that.
Actually, I think it's gonna be okay to do it now, so that we get it out. Either way, we're gonna talk about it. Go ahead, Philip.
I guess just I believe in fairness of information, I believe that number that Elizabeth mentioned about the current apartments there, all that number did not go to the Bartlett. That affected all the schools, if I'm correct. I mean, a big portion of it went to Bartlett, but not the full number of them went. 11 of them went to Bartlett?
No, I mean the one that's being proposed.
Right, but we mentioned how many kids were coming in, that came in for that original
Abington Square, yeah.
Abington Square was 2.6 per unit. 2.6 per unit didn't all go to Bartlett. They affected
Some
the
could have
whole-
gone to the middle school, some could have gone to the high
Right.
school.
So the new complex coming in the kindergarten, and the new complex coming in, even if it's 2 point whatever per building, it's not gonna all go to Bartlett, but 10 students to Bartlett forces it over the top. I just wanted to clarify that.
John?
I guess it's more of a question, if Article 2 passed, the payment is 344,000?
For
The-
the first year.
The amount,
Is it
no,
after that?
no, the amount that needs to be appropriated for the first year payment would be 364,487, because that's the difference between what I project the payment to be and what's already in the bank. You have to add the 344,970 that's in the bank
Oh,
to the
okay.
364,487 to come to the, what I'm projecting to be the first year payment.
And then the second year payment would be pretty close to the same amount.
7, so.
You would,
I went to
if
the
it's a
hearing.
full year, yeah, if it isn't, yeah.
Yeah, I went to the hearing,
Yes, in fact, I saw you on TV, man.
and I'm gonna grossly
This is important,
oversimplify, because
guys.
I haven't been part of I haven't been part of all, but what I got was the first year is actually pretty light, because they're in construction mode, so you don't feel the full effect, full force of the impact, the tax impact. It's the second, based on conventional financing, it's the second year where it starts at its highest and then gradually goes down. I actually talked to some people there about potentially some interesting and innovative ways to maybe have that go a different way by looking at non-conventional financing and bonding.
And what would the approximate second year be? Because that's really what we're looking at.
I don't have that handout with me, so I don't.
But it'd be approximately 700.
I'm not even gonna venture anywhere close to answering that. I haven't the foggiest idea. I don't have any information. Now, I don't know if Jen might.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
What the second year payment would be. It shows here it's almost it's a little over 700,000. So the second year payment is really the actual payment that we're gonna be nailed with from there on out. So I was just curious what that would
Let
be.
Jen answer first.
I would imagine, John, that you are, what Ray handed out at the bond hearing has a total payment due of $1,075,636 at the end of the first year, which is both principal and interest.
And what was that, the first year? It's 1 million?
$1,075,636, and according to Ray's handout, there's an estimated tax rate impact of $1.04.
How much was that? $1.04?
$1.04. And it goes down every year.
Per thousand.
I
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And so there's, okay, then it would go down after that. But nobody knows the number the second year would be.
3 million is one.
What do you mean, nobody knows the second
You
year?
know, does anybody know how much the payment would be the second year? I mean, is it online?
You're welcome to look at the handout.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, Jen, continue.
Okay. It was
Oh,
also
okay.
discussed too, that with the retirement of the Mountain View bond in 2010, if you were to compare what the taxpayers were paying in 2010 to what they would be paying should this article pass, it's a net result, which is not to say that it's not gonna be expensive, it's just something that people are already used to paying. That did also come up in the bond hearing the other night.
Elizabeth? And then I got Hank.
Ray had also mentioned that, they were hopeful that they would be able to get a very good interest rate, and that, and maybe Brian can speak to this, but that construction, they thought they could get a very good deal, basically, because construction is so slow right now that they thought they could,
I can't speak to that.
oh, sorry.
Hank?
All I was gonna say was basically what Jen said, the Mountain View bond was retired in November of 1911. Not 2011.
You're showing your age, Hank.
Back.
The high school wasn't even built yet.
So, that was dropped off the radar and will show up. So it is sort of a little.
Further inquiries on this subject before a motion's made? Okay, then I'm ready for a motion. Who wants to make a motion to, the only thing that we can do with the warrant articles with appropriations is either recommend or not recommend. Jen,
I'd make a motion to recommend.
is there a second? Go to speak. Let the people hear you.
Me?
All right, Jacker. Do you want to speak to your recommend?
No.
Jacker?
No.
Anybody else want to chat about it? Go ahead, Bill.
Mr. Chair. I'm kind of torn, because I know I've been at Bartlett, because I was the rep the year before you, and they're in a real bind over there. It's really crowded, and it's an ancient, the core school's very ancient. I would only say that, although I think something needs to be done, and it seems like a lot of people spent a lot of time, based on all the questions I asked, spent a lot of time thinking through how they could do it in phases. And Ray and I talked about alternative bonding, alternative financing that could reduce the impact potentially over the first initial years. It's a well thought out plan, but I can't recommend it this year. It seems to be a good solution, but it's just the absolute worst year to go at it, so I'm not gonna recommend it.
Hank?
I'm gonna speak for the motion, and I'm not speaking as a school board member, believe me, I'm not. But I think these have to be done, sooner or later. And I don't think we're ever gonna get better prices on either bonds or construction. We've got 9 companies have already answered the RFQs. So, for that reason, and I know times are tough, but if we wait longer, the longer we wait, the more it's gonna cost. That's all my comment.
Further comment? I have a feeling this is gonna be a tough one for people to vote on. All right, you ready for the vote? The vote is to recommend the Article 2 Elementary Schools bond. Those in favor, would you signify by raising your hand, please? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me get your names. Lisa, Checker, Philip, Hank, and Jen. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Keep them up, because that's only 12. Dan, Bill, Guy, Ivan, John, Richard and Scott, and abstained. Elizabeth and Brian.
Can I
The
read
mo-
my reason in?
You may read into the record your reason for the
I
abstention.
simply haven't decided yet. I don't want anybody to think there's like some big
Understand?
principled motion
Do you
reason, I
want to
just
read
haven't
anything into the
decided.
record, Brian? You don't have to.
It's basically what Elizabeth said. I'm back and forth in my head, and I can't give a definitive.
Yeah.
You have a motion? Which is to
Not
not
recommend.
recommend. Is there a second on the
Second.
not? Ivan, do you want to speak to your not recommend?
I do not.
Thank you.
And Ivan?
Nothing personal.
Okay. Scott?
Yeah, I just want to put my comment in, and that is, I think this is needed. But one of my big concerns is Dunbarton. And if for some reason Dunbarton decides to leave the SAU, you're gonna lose a lot of revenue, one. And secondly, then I think the school board they'd have to consider possibly converting Mountain View into a upper L/middle school. And I think if I knew that Dunbarton was in and New Boston was in, I would have supported this. But not knowing, particularly Dunbarton and the loss of $1 million or $2 million in revenue, and then we're building an addition onto a couple of different schools, when you can make the argument that you would be down a couple of hundred students at Mountain View Middle School, which would then free up capacity. And I know that it's not the best thing to have fourth graders at the middle school. And I was fortunate that my kids were fifth graders when they went there. And that's really the way it should be. But that change happened like right before my kids got there. I think it was Dr. Lockwood changed that up. But if Dunbarton were to leave, then that would have to be a viable option to consider, and until that decision gets ironed out, I don't think it would be prudent to support this.
John?
I want to thank Scott for saying what he said. I have been talking with the state rep up in Dunbarton, and they're seriously considering, even though it's $4,000 more a student. He said there's a huge chance that they're going to book. And when they leave, like Scott said, there's going to be available space. When I went to high school, 7th and 8th grade, it was in a wing of the high school. Were we close to the high school kids? Yeah, every now and then somebody got whacked in the head, but other than that, I mean, they kept us separated, and I think they can do that here, if that's the case. And
Further debate? Lisa?
Question?
No?
Okay, then forget it.
Further debate? Seeing none, those ready for the question? The question is, should we put not recommend on Article 2 elementary school bond? Those in favor of not recommend, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and abstained. Same as last time, except Brian made a decision.
Point of order, Mr. Chair, did you vote?
Yes, I did. My hand was up for the affirmative. I will read the votes after I log them in. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I have it passing 7-6-1. Yes, Dan, Bill, Guy, Ivan, John, Richard, Scott. No, Brian, Checker, Hank, Jen, Lisa, Philip. Abstained, Elizabeth, who, according to her previous, hadn't made up her
Same
mind
reason.
in between the two. Okay. Now we are on the draft Article 3, which is to raise and appropriate $2.89 million, 2.865576 gross budget for athletic complex, the auditorium, and what else is in this article? I need a motion to either recommend or not recommend.
I'll make a motion.
To,
Not recommend.
okay. Do you want to speak to this one?
Yes, I do, thank you. Again, in these extreme economic times, to lay down $800,000 of artificial turf, to me, is just a huge, huge luxury. You know, I think we should, you know, if we're gonna vote on something this large, I would agree with probably most everybody here that, you know, Bartlett is having troubles, you know, for room. You know, if I was going to approve this money, which I'm not, which I wouldn't, you know, I think we should address there first before we lay down artificial turf. And I was just in the gymnasium, well, we're all over there, over to the auditorium, and, you know, it's a good room. You know, could it use new seats and everything? Yeah. And for the addition out in the back, I don't know why we just can't do that on a weekend. Local guys get together and just build that little storage unit that they want. You know, the cement pad's there. You know, we could probably get half the lumber donated. I'm not sure, but
I hear a volunteer.
yeah, I would volunteer because I've done it before, and
All right, we're
that's how
going
we
into
save money.
discussion, so.
Yeah.
Further
But thank
debate?
you.
Just a comment. Second.
That's it. Oh, yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Guy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Dan. It's basically a ditto. I mean, with the economy the way it is, and this article is on the warrant, I mean, you know, this is one of those, you throw enough mud on the wall, some of it's gonna stick. This is unbelievable that this is here at this time. I know it'd be nice to have, and I know our current sports facilities are not what they should be, but come on. Another 2.8 million? What would that do to the tax rate? There's no way I'm gonna support this. I'm gonna support the motion. I'm not gonna recommend this at all now.
I'm gonna go to Jen and then over to Philip. Jen?
Neither article was a unanimous vote. It was considered very seriously at the school board level. Both articles were, but we're speaking of this one. This one comes with the backing a lot of sports booster groups, a lot of parent groups that work for the theater. Yes, it is a lot of money, but in order to help keep our school competitive in its sports, this is a way that we see our schools need to go. Yes, the theater is nice, but they've actually stopped making the seats that you sit in when you're there, and if they break, they are reaching the point of not being able to be repaired. The auditorium is not within ADA compliance as it is. This isn't a mud on the wall campaign. This is our schools need this.
Phil?
I'm not sure how I'm gonna vote on this, recommend or not recommend. I'm thinking I'm close, but if I remember correctly, if I remember some of the conversations I heard, some of the discussions on this, there has something to do with our use of whatever the park is that we have our track in right now. Barnard Park versus having our own track of something to be done. I'm trying to remember what it was, but there's something about our lease or whatever with that park. It's not so, I do know for a fact from even when I was in the school board that it's in terrible shape and it's probably one of the worst tracks to run on. Having been a track person myself, I can attest, looking at it, that's the case, so. Thank you.
And Guy?
Just one last comment. You know, if the school district wants to maybe bring this back next year, adopt pay to play, I might consider supporting this if you want to take the money out of the budget and go to pay to play. You can't have both.
Bill?
I mean, I'm not gonna recommend this. Again, it's I know it's well-intentioned, and I know a lot of the people who are supporting it. It's, you know, and perhaps our fields, I don't know it firsthand, that our fields are substandard, but I'll take them at their word that our fields are substandard compared to others. But again, I think bringing it up right now with very little chance to vet the positives, to offset some of the negatives, and Guy brings up a real good point about revenues, a good faith effort to demonstrate how offsetting revenues could alleviate the sting of the tax impact would certainly go a long way to show a good faith effort that the board is thinking about revenues. The other thing that hasn't totally been thought through that may be a big positive for this perhaps next year is the fact that with an upgrade of the facility, there's a lot of offsetting special event revenues that similar such upgraded fields receive as a windfall, because when you have an upgraded facility that's first rate, it does attract all sorts of additional curricular revenue possibilities. But of course, we won't know that because we're just talking about this right now. So all those possibilities could potentially sway voters and board members next year in the room, but you're not going to have an opportunity to really know what those offsetting projections would be because nobody's done that work yet. So it may be that next year is the year that this is addressed, but without that other information, I can't recommend it right now, not in this economy.
I'm on the list, and then Scott's on the list. My comment has to do with, I need to get over the revenue adjustment tax rate before I can do this, even though this is great. But I gotta tell you, when we did the operating budget, one of the toughest votes I had was to take out the smart boards. Because I love technology, I love the way it works, except for calculators. I don't wanna buy calculators, but smart boards work. And the smart boards were over $100,000, and the first year payment is only $56,000. So I'm having a hard time sending my taxes for this before we send it for the smart boards. Scott?
You know, I don't wanna sound like Bill Bates, but,
Certainly
too
not.
late. In this economy, no.
You gotta change it.
I concur with the chair in the sense that, you know, I think the most important thing for a school or the town is your operating budget, and knowing that due to the revenue adjustments, you know, taxpayers are gonna see an increase in their, you know, in their bills. And I just can't support Article 3 for that primary reason. And secondly, when I was on the school board, I tried many times to attempt a pay-to-play. I tried 3 or 4 times to get advertising on our fields, on the fences, like the Villa does and others, junior baseball, got squashed on that, to try to bring in some different revenues that really wouldn't really have that much of an impact. Now, I'm not saying that these, you know, in Parks and Recreation, we, on the town side, we are biting the bullet and we're charging some fees, to help with some of the costs. I think it is about time. This is not new, and, I would share what Guy said. I think I would be a lot more supportive of this in the future if there was some level of participation in terms of a pay-to-play system or advertising or something. And with, obviously, the provisions if someone needs assistance, that it's there. I mean, we don't want to shut any kids out, but that is my big bugaboo. It's not the right time, not this year. And secondly, I think we just need to, once and for all, enact some sort of student activity fee, not just for sports, but for other activities as well.
Further debate? Are you ready for the question? The question is, do you want to not recommend the budget? Those in favor of not recommend, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. missed one. We've got Dan, Bill, Elizabeth, Guy, Ivan, John, Philip, Richard, Scott, and who was the other one? I counted 10 hands. That was Brian. Those opposed, signify by raising your hand, please.
Oh, wait.
This is opposed to the not recommend.
Opposed to the not recommend.
Yes. Checker and Jen and abstained. Lisa and Hank is going to abstain. Does the abstentions want to read anything into the record? You don't have to.
I voted on the school board at this.
Okay. The motion passes 10-2. It'll show not recommended 10-2 on the warrant. Okay, that completes the work on, yes, Elizabeth?
Can I propose a motion?
It might not be a motion. I was going to take a 5-minute recess. Do you need a motion first? Huh?
On the school side.
It's on the school side? Okay, go ahead, try something.
I'd like to propose a motion that the Budget Committee respectfully request the school board to reopen their investigation into student activity fees or pay-to-play.
That's not something that's in the RSA that we can do. I mean, if you want to have a discussion
revenue
about it,
side.
we can do that.
Affects revenues.
Say again?
Affects revenues.
Yeah, but it's not under our purview.
Oh,
I mean,
all
making a motion to that effect isn't something we do. We deal with appropriations. But as a motion, I
Thank
can't
you.
really accept it and go forward with it. I mean, there's
Okay.
nothing. Now, the only other thing to do, because I don't want to come back to this after, would it be appropriate for us to make an all-inclusive motion right now to restrict reconsideration of all the school votes to this point? Would anyone like to make that motion?
Sure.
To restrict, who said that? Okay. Restrict reconsideration of all votes made.
I will second it.
Okay, that's Guy and Philip.
Mr. Chair,
And I'm not sure if restricting reconsideration is debatable. Anybody really want to say anything? I don't think so. Those, and so basically what this means is the votes we took on the school, we're not going to come back after we do the town and someone make a motion to say, I want to reconsider it, and then we go over it again. We're done, we have some things, and we can move forward. That's what this means for administrative purposes. So if you vote yes, we're done until deliberative session, okay? Those in favor of restricting reconsideration of all the votes so far, please signify by raising your hand. I think that's, no, it's not. Opposed? John? And there were no abstentions.
Almost got ahead of yourself there.
Yeah, it's okay. All right, that concludes the school, unless somebody has any administrative stuff they want to do. Otherwise than that, I'd like to take a 5-minute recess without objection. You good with that? Let's take a 5-minute recess, and if you could do that for us, Andrew, I appreciate it.
Do you lean forward?
We have changes to make.
Proprietary information.
The light's gonna go on momentarily. It is on. We are back. All right, we are now,
Lights on, but no one's home.
oh, we're all home. Okay, now, you also got an MS7 from me. The MS7 happens to be the form that goes to the Department of Revenue. If I forget to do the administrative announcements, sometime this week, I believe, the official MS7 and 27 and 37 forms will be completed, and we need a majority of the Budget Committee. I need 9 members to come and sign them. At least 9 members. More can. They are usually here, upstairs, with Catherine, outside of Sue DeRusso's office, that little Catherine
Fisher.
I was gonna say Fisher, but it didn't sound right off. And so we'll have to get signatures for those.
What are we signing?
The MS7, MS27, and MS37 forms. Those are the forms that say this is what the Budget Committee did and what we are sending to the deliberative session. And Sue has them done, probably Dawn will get those done, and then Ray does them and gets them over.
I just wanted to make it crystal clear that whether you agree or you don't agree with the budgets or budget, budget or budgets.
Right, this is not,
Failure to sign it and get a majority means that the budget
can't get
committee's
posted.
budget doesn't get posted.
right. And if it doesn't get posted,
Right?
then it's
So
potential
not
to
whether
be.
by signing it doesn't mean that you agree to the number, it just means
No.
that it's. gonna
Signing
go.
it says you agree that this is what a majority of the Budget Committee
Right.
did
That was the work that
in
was done.
session.
Right.
That's,
You
the
agreed to
work
the
was
work.
done, that's what it means, okay?
That's by this Friday?
They usually have them, she usually has them by Thursday, because once we're done tonight, what I will do is tell her there were no changes, because I sent Ray a copy of what I sent you for the MS27, and I sent Sue and Dawn a copy of the MS7. So if we make changes tonight, which I'm suspecting we're gonna make a couple of changes to the sewer budget tonight, because they've asked us repeatedly to kind of make a couple, and it's went this way. I remembered to put it on the minutes, so if you would like, I'm going to ask for a very quick, if we grab your town budget, I'm gonna ask for a very quick explanation of what the requested modifications to the sewer commission budget is. You're on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jim Bouchard. I'm a member of the Sewer Commission. Back on November 30th, we voted some changes to our budget from what was in our original 2012 budget that went to the selectmen. And they're relatively minor, but I wanted to bring them before you tonight. One of the changes is under our GL account 60-49140-45040. And that's our sewer administration banking services. In our selectmen's budget, we had $3,700. We amended that down to $3,000, which is a decrease in our line just for the cost of banking services, the way we restructured the banking services to be parallel to the Board of Selectmen. The second item out of the four items I have to address is 60-49140-45340 sewer administration postage. That went from the budget to the selectmen of $6,200 to $6,400 because that reflects the new postage rate that the postage service announced. Line item 60-49140-74100, which is sewer administration interest expense. There was a correction in that. The selectmen's budget was 148,144. That has been corrected to 156,276, $156,276. The last one is the line item of 60-49141-55320, sewer operations, the vacuum truck maintenance labor. Originally, the selectmen's budget showed us having $115,000 in that line item. On November 30th, we amended that down to $47,125 based on the DPW was changed their format to have the existing VAC-Con truck refurbished versus purchasing a new one. Since that time, they have had that refurbished, and we have paid our share out of it, out of our 2011 account. So now that further gets modified down to $17,000 is our 2012 request. And that would be the summary, and that's all of our changes to our budget as we have it adopted now. And I believe our total now is $2,031,222. Any questions?
I'll take care of that, hang on.
Yep. Sorry. We had a fund for that.
Okay, equals that.
Could you repeat that final number, please?
The final number that I have before me is $2,031,222,
Okay, then we are not in sync,
okay?
and that's what we need to do before we go any further. What I currently have, let me get back to, just make sure that the detail, 2121560 is what I had. You guys agree?
Yep.
Okay, so let me get to the expense summary. 2121560, okay? So, let me just. Verify that all the numbers are being added up properly, 423,209. I'm putting those formulas in now, Scott. Remember you had mentioned to me? They were hard.
That's the change you made right
What do you have? 56270, yep, that's it.
there.
I match up his numbers.
Okay, I get a change of 60213, and I come up to 2061347. So let's make sure that we're talking the same numbers. We're going from 3,700 to 3,000
It stays the same.
for for banking services.
Correct.
We are going from 6,200 to 6,400 for 453 postage.
Yes.
So the first one came down 700, this one's going up 200.
Correct.
We are going from, I'm looking at 74100, interest expense was at 148,114. You want 156,276?
I have mine, I thought was 148, 144.
It's 114.
114, okay.
Yep. So there's there's $30.
Yep, that's $30.
Okay, so that's a change of 8162. And then I have 55320, the vacuum truck maintenance is now you only want, oh, there's the difference, I still had the 47,125.
17,000.
So you want 17,000 there, that's a $98,000 reduction. So we're at 2031222.
That's what we have.
Okay, so we're 2031222.
That's difference in 93,338.
$90,338. Okay, now we are cool, and then I can transfer that to my other sheet. Any questions for Jim? John?
And that is driven by revenue, correct? I mean, by, fees, I'm sorry, fees.
By fees and reimbursements from the state under grant programs for sewer construction, things like that.
So no tax impact?
No tax impact at all.
Thank you.
Local tax.
Yes.
2031222. I'm gonna have to make all of these entries in here because it affects the MS7. I'm just gonna put 90,338 in the expense summary. 90,338, 2031222. That brings the total operating budget to 21355,244. I'll get that when we do the other piece. Okay, any further questions for Jim?
I had a question of this.
Yes.
The interest expense, I got the old number and the new number, but I didn't get from you, what was the difference? What was the change?
The difference is in the way we handle the banking at the bank. The selectmen have gone to, opted for a new process. I don't fully understand how it is. It's, do you understand? It's a way of looking at interest on a monthly accrual basis, or charges based on interest, on the interest in versus a yearly basis. And it's, I guess it's.
So it's a recalculation.
It's a recalculation, it's accepted practice, and it has to do within the banking business, and I know the selectmen are doing it, and I know, from what we understand, other towns, and the town auditor recommended this is the way we should do it.
further questions? Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you, appreciate it.
At this point, what I'd be looking for is a motion to, if anybody so pleased, to enact those changes to bring sewer from 2121560 to 2031222, resulting in a reduction of 90338. Guys making a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Elizabeth is seconding. Do you want to speak to your motion?
No
Do
need.
you want to speak to your second?
No.
Is there any other questions by the committee? Seeing none, those in favor of the motion to reduce the sewer budget, which is going to include reducing revenues, please signify by raising your hand. And I think that's unanimous. Okay. We now, is there any other motions anybody else wants to make on the town budget? Seeing none, we have a new number, which is, let me read it to you, because I'm gonna write it down on paper.
Point of order?
Yeah.
Didn't Scott say at the public hearing that there was, the selectmen were gonna ask for a change in connection with the road plan?
Yeah.
Are you,
I'm gonna do that. I just didn't.
well, jump to it. I
You
asked.
Just ask for motions.
And, thank you. Let me do it. Are there any further motions on the town budget?
Yeah, I'd like to request that the Budget Committee consider reducing the town's operating budget by $1 million in the road reclamation line.
Do you happen to know where that is? Is that in the DPW or is that in CIP?
Just a minute.
Is that the CIP or the DPW?
It would be DPW reclamation.
Too much sugar.
Hold on.
Okay, all I gotta do is look for the big number.
And it might be CIP. Hold
Yeah, I
No.
think it is.
I thought it was in CIP,
on.
actually.
It might be.
You're all getting your paper.
Yeah, CIP.
Yeah, I've got a number if it helps.
That's the 49010.
49010 7025, oh,
240.
240.
Reclamation, and you're making a motion to reduce that from $1.5 million to $500,000?
Yes.
There's a motion to reduce reclamation from $1.5 million down to $500,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Elizabeth seconds it. You want to talk to your motion?
Yeah, as I stated at the public hearing, the Board of Selectmen put a warrant article on the ballot which would ask the voters to expend $1 million for roads. That's essentially, we've done it similar in the past.
Draft Article 18, which appeared on the top of page 2 of the public handout. Let me get the actual, some wording that was broader than what was on the public handout. And read it to you. This would be Draft Article 18. It says, to see of the town, I believe to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1 million for Goffstown's road improvement program. Passage of this article will direct the selectmen to include the road plan in future operating and default budgets of the town of Goffstown beginning in 2013. Elizabeth, speak to your second.
No.
Guy?
Didn't we already pass a warrant article a few years ago that directs that the road plan be part of the operating budget?
We are actually in debate mode. How much do you guys want to be loose on this one?
I'll debate that question.
No, I don't wanna do that.
Well,
how's this?
well, the thing is, I think this needs a little less stringency because of its nature. Because, yes, I agree with you. I believe we've already done this once to the voters.
Also,
The other way.
the purpose of doing this is because the default number is 0. And this, I'd like to make a motion to amend the original motion.
You can do that.
I'd make a motion to adjust the amount from 1 million to 1.5 million.
Well, actually, it's at 500,000. Why would
Not
we-
on my sheet.
He just made it.
Right.
He
wants
just
to-
made a motion to reduce it from 1.5 to $500,000.
Right, he wants to change that.
Right, I want to reduce it to 0.
Okay, so you want to
I-
reduce
let's
it
put the
another
whole-
500,000.
Let's put the whole thing on, or we can't really do that, can we? We can't,
You can
this
make
committee
this,
can't.
you can't put it a special article. You can only do appropriations that is in a budget. That's the only thing that's under your control.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay, I am not gonna type it then. Hit the backspace
Point of
key,
order?
Joanne.
I guess, now,
Yes.
point of order. Point of clarification,
Yes,
motion was made, why can we not amend it?
you can.
I withdrew it.
He withdrew it.
But he withdrew it based on a side conversation that you two had that I could not hear about, we could not amend something for whatever reason.
We did?
I thought you did. Appropriation.
Can't amend
No,
the
no, no, it
warrant.
was the amount of money he was trying to make the motion. I was trying to restate the motion and get, for me to accept the motion, I had to understand what the motion was.
Okay.
And so, what it ended up being is the motion was to amend the main motion from its current 500,000 to 0.
Correct.
He was going from 1.5 to 0, and I said, you can't do that. You have to go from 5, because it's an amendment. The amendment is only to go from Scott's motion to 0, not from the beginning number. Once that gets voted, then we can talk about. But that's moot at the moment, because he withdrew his motion. So I never got a second, so it went away.
Okay.
Comment on the motion.
Comment on the motion.
I know, I can't ask Scott questions on this, right?
We've been a little lenient, so
I-
let's go into, I feel that the whole committee wants to hear this, so go for it.
I know, it seems
If-
to me.
Without objection? Okay.
We'll leave it to your
I
discretion.
think I know what's going on here, okay? Is that I think the Board of Selectmen sees roughly a $2 million difference between their proposed budget, or the budget that we're gonna vote on to recommend or not recommend, and the default. The default budget has 0 in this line. Looking at the sheet I've got
No.
in CIP. That line is 0 under default. Am I correct?
It is, but that,
It's not correct.
no, a year-to-date CIP, default budget shows, but you know what? It's on the line above. Default budget allowance is $1,010,000
Okay,
for the entire
okay.
column. Because it was 10,000 for cemetery expansion and $1 million for reclamation.
So default, I see.
But your premise is correct.
Okay,
I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for, you know,
I mean, we've stated it in 2 meetings, you know, the rationale behind it. I mean, the default budget is, it's $2 million less. And, this provides 2 things. It gives folks, one, an opportunity to decide if they want to spend that type of money, because I can tell you that if faced with a default budget, we would probably go to the road program first anyway. So it gives the voters that opportunity to weigh in on it. And it also, you know, I think it's, I don't think it's,
well,
I think if you follow town elections, last year was a great example, where I think the school budget was $1 million more than the default, and that failed.
Right.
And I think, you know, the board decided, you know, this is not something that we've done that's unusual, and let's do it one more time because of that difference.
Does, I guess the problem I have is that the wording of this, to see it is misleading.
Well, I can.
We don't
can
have
I-
an input
can
on our appropriation.
Can I clarify that? The wording on the warrant that Dan just read, we asked for a couple of opinions from DRA and our town council as to, can you do that? And our town attorney said that by putting something on the ballot that says it will be included in next year's operating budget or next year's default budget is, not, oh, is that what you?
No, it's the
Hey,
fact.
let him finish that, because I
I'm
want to
sorry.
hear, I want to hear that part.
That is not binding. It is ultimately the discretion of the governing bodies who control what the default number is to determine what is the default number. Is it an ongoing expense or is it a one-time, et cetera? So even though we have this wording, it doesn't, the only thing that it does, it would just take the pulse of the community. It's like a referendum, but it doesn't, it does not legally bind
Okay.
it to go on
next
to next
point?
year's default.
Thank you for clarifying that. It's the way that, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1 million for Goffstown's road improvement program implies that that's it. It
That's
doesn't
not it,
say,
but
it
that's-
doesn't say in addition to the $500,000 that's already in the budget.
Actually, it does,
It does.
it says this appropriation is in addition to Article 13, but every appropriation article says this is in addition to Article
So,
13.
The average Joe's gonna think, well, geez, we only got $1 million for the road program, he's not gonna have a clue that there's already $500,000 in there.
If, I believe that it's still our opportunity to amend that.
The selectmen.
Yes.
As long as the purpose of appropriation and the amount doesn't change
Correct.
from what was discussed at the public hearing.
I don't have,
I would like to see
speaking
that.
for the board, I don't think we would have any objection to including language that said would be additional monies, above and beyond the 500,000 that is already in.
That would be fantastic.
All right.
Let me go to Richard.
For those who don't have it handy, the language that Scott was talking about, Article 6 from last year, what it stated was, shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $499,000 for the purpose of reinstating the Budget Committee's reduction of the approved CIP road plan. And then the important language here, passage of this article will also indicate the voters' desire to keep the costs of the road plan in the annual operating budget. And then this appropriation is in addition to Article 3. And that passed 1484 to 928. And I understand Scott's point that that's not binding. In fact, last year when I was looking at it, I thought, that's not binding. But, and I'm no lawyer, and I gave you that opinion for free.
You should charge next time.
But it also indicates to me, granted, I wasn't directly elected by the people in the town, but the people who elected the Budget Committee also were the folks who voted for Article 6. So it makes me consider the opinion of the voters is that they want the road plan as part of the annual operating budget. And last year, this article was recommended by the Board of Selectmen 5-0, and the Budget Committee 10-2. That's all I wanted to say.
I'm on the list, but go ahead, Philip.
Thank you, Richard. I would agree wholeheartedly. I understand what the selectmen are trying to do here, but it's, no, I won't say anything derogatory. Well, not meaning to be, but it's coming out that way. I think it's appropriate. I mean, we've been voted in here. We said it before. We want to vote, like we've said it many times, many of us, what the people have voted at the meeting. That article was out there saying it was to be put in there. Back when I was on the Budget Committee years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I believe we took it out and, or it was never in the operating budget. It was always a special article. And at one year, we finally said, let's put it in the operating budget because we don't want to take the chance of it not passing and not having a road program. We're going back and forth here to play the game as to, let's lower it here, but put it over here kind of thing. I understand the reasoning behind it, but it was voted last year to put it in there. Let's leave it in there.
I guess you and Richard kind of went where I was going. That's what I recalled too, and if the in versus out on any given year is to make sure that we roll the dice and get, we as the town, that is, rolls the dice in whatever way is expedient to get the money, It seems a little back and forth to me, especially if the intent, and as Richard pointed out, the vote was the way it was. It does, I don't know, it does seem a little weird that you're putting it in, then you're taking it out, and you're looking at the tea leaves, and you're saying our chances of getting what we want is a little bit better this way as opposed to that way last year, you know, so I somewhat agree with that.
My personal comment before I recognize Scott, prior to hearing any of this, I was not in favor of this at all. Now of hearing what's happening, I've always tried to give the voter more opportunity rather than less to vote for what they want to vote for. But because of the wording that was non-binding, that was on a ballot last year, said what it said, that throws me back into a dead even. My opinion as of this minute is I would likely abstain on this vote because for me, it could go either way. And a no vote or a yes vote, I'm not sure if it helps or hinders. That was the end. Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted, I hope I was very transparent into the reasons why the board is doing this. And I made the comment at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and I'll make it here tonight, is that if you go back to town voting records and you see that in every occasion where the default budget is $1 million less than, these budgets fail. And if that were the case, to keep doing the same thing, I think that's the definition of insanity when you do that. And if the ultimate goal of the Board of Selectmen, and hopefully this budget committee, is to give forward enough money to run the town and to do our roads, et cetera, then I believe that, separating that out, giving the voters that choice, because ultimately they're gonna have to vote for it if they want to spend the money, I don't think is not necessarily a bad thing. And secondly, when we talk about going in and out, I mean, last year, this budget committee wanted it to be separate. They wanted it to be out. They wanted to give voters an opportunity to lessen the budget impact and give voters more of an opportunity to have a say in things. So, and the Board of Selectmen agreed to it. So now the shoe's on the other foot. The Board of Selectmen is respectfully asking to place $1 million outside of it, knowing that if it passes, it's neutral. If it doesn't, then obviously we don't spend $1 million on roads. But I guess the board, complied with the Budget Committee's request last year to put it as a separate article. Now we're asking the Budget Committee to do the same thing this year and honor the Board of Selectmen's request.
John?
If you could reread the part where it's going to be included in 13, in the operating budget, in the default side. And from there on out forever, correct?
Oh, no, it's non-binding.
It's not.
It doesn't
binding,
say
John.
anything like that.
Okay, so
What it
it
simply
doesn't
says
guarantee
is,
that it'll be there in 14.
no, passage of this article will direct the selectmen to include the road plan in future operating and default budgets of the town of Goffstown beginning in 2013. They can't include it in the default because the default is a separate piece of legislation, okay, that says how do you
Okay.
calculate a default? You
That was the
calculate a
opinion that we got.
default because it's there. If this was taken out of the budget, okay, and if it was the default budget was voted in, then there's $1 million in the default budget next. If it's taken out and they vote for the budget, then there's $500,000 in the default budget in the future, not the special articles. Special articles are quote-unquote one-time expenditures not to be included in the default budget of the following year. How's that for confusion? Boy, further comments? Guy?
If this motion fails, what's this, who's to say that article isn't gonna stay there?
That's my other comment.
We would zero it out.
And we're talking about 13, but the article we're referencing is 18, the road
Right.
plan.
Well,
We would zero it.
Article 13 is the budget.
Right, exactly,
Right.
which is
Current.
what the current motion is to.
Correct, we would zero it
Yes.
out.
Well, there's no guarantee, but that's what likely would happen. I'm conflicted. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm conflicted too.
conflicted.
The unfortunate part of this whole thing is we can't go forward to set a number to go to deliberative session without making a decision on this, or not making a decision on this means we already have a number to go. You see what I'm saying? So
And we have an article for the road plan, should the main
Yep.
budget fail. I mean, should the.
That's correct. If the way I see the calculation, okay, looking at it from here, is the default budget, and I'm not gonna do the sewer and EMS, just the general fund appropriations, is 16.9 million. The budget committee is at 18.9 million. That's $2 million. So if you take $1 million off the BC, that's 17.9 million versus 16.9. And they're gonna put that $1 million, I suspect, that they said they were, actually, it's $1,010,000. I found that other 10,000, or 25,000, let me look at it, because of, there was $25,000 because of the $50,000 exhaust, there's a $25,000 grant. So, that was another one. So if I look at that, if we don't take it out, if we vote no on this, we go in with 2. If they vote to default, they're down $1 million. But they can still have the thing. Go ahead.
I'm inclined to, just a quick comment on the motion. I'm inclined to support it if the selectmen, as Scott said, you believe you guys would be willing to do, is to reword that to the Article 18. I think that's the one for the road plan.
Reword Article 18, yes.
Reword it in such a way that the voters would understand that
There's already
there's already.
500,000.
And let the chips fall where they may. Let's see what the voters do with that extra $1 million. After all, I mean, it's their money. I tend to lean that way.
And as another personal comment going in, and as I stated before, I like to always defer to the voters. And is that outweighing the wording that was on the article last year in this particular instance? And I'm now on the yes side.
And don't forget, there was an article in '06 or '07.
Yeah, I know.
Was it '07?
All right, further comments? Bill?
And I'm not necessarily gonna get an answer to it, but I wonder if this is the case this year, that it would be the budget, or the Board of Selectmen's intent to make that a standard practice again, moving forward. And you may not be able to comment.
I definitely can't comment on that because boards change and the
Right.
prerogative of those boards change. But I think, we went for a long time keeping it separate. Then we put it in. But you know what? Then we went through the last 3 or 4 years haven't been the best in the world. So I mean, there's factors here. I just wanted to be very candid and honest with you. This is why this is the case, why we, decided to do it. I don't have a problem, by the way, amending my motion to include the language that you stated.
I don't think I can, I'm not gonna go there.
Okay.
Because I don't think we have the authority of that. I think you can take it as part of the
Okay.
the debate, but it's non-binding.
Okay.
Further comments? Good. You ready for the vote? The vote is, do you want to reduce reclamation from 1.5 million to 500,000? Those in favor signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Opposed? Philip, John, and let me just write that. John, and those abstained? Ivan. Okay, that motion passes. And if I could read the yes votes, it's Dan, Bill, Brian, Checker, Hank, Elizabeth, Guy, Jen, Lisa, Richard, Scott. That's 11-2-1. now let me get to the expense summary report. And the new number is 20355-244.
Get out of here.
BC adjustments, -1,000,000,000. Okay, and what did we do to the sewer? Did the MS7 change? $90338. 20355-244. Perfect. 20355-244. Got it. Okay. Further, I'm in sync, I'm in balance, I'm a happy camper. Thank you for your palate. You know how they say it. I'm on the level because the bubble's in the middle. All right.
Oh, jeez.
Had to get one shot in.
Wow.
Engineer. All right, are there further motions on the town budget? Again, anybody? Anybody at all, Scott? Anybody at all? Any further motions for the town?
No, I think that was
Okay.
it. We had some revenue adjustments, slight, but that's
You
not,
can't do that.
right.
Okay, at this point, yes? Yeah, but we didn't fund it, so that's okay. We'll deal with the article separately. Okay, right now, I have a budget for the town of 20 million. Gross appropriation, $355,244. That is 20355-244. Can I get confirmation?
Working on it.
We reduced $1 million and we reduced 90338
That is,
Oh,
your
because
numbers are right.
Because of the sewer?
because of
Yep.
sewer.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you give me that number one last time, please?
20355-244. So what I'm going to ask is for someone to make a motion to bring the 20355-244 to deliberative session.
So moved.
That is Elizabeth. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Do you want to speak to your motion, Elizabeth?
No.
Scott, do you want to speak? Does anybody else want to speak on this number going to deliberative session? All those in favor of 20355-244 going to deliberative session signify by raising your hand, please. I believe that is 13. Opposed? 1. That would be John. Okay. I need a motion to either recommend or not recommend.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Was that Brian?
Yeah.
Elizabeth, do you want to comment on your recommend?
No.
Brian, do you want to comment on the second?
Nope.
Anybody else want to say anything? On this? Philip?
I just hope the members who voted would, because of the discrepancy on the school budget, vote the same on the town. Keep the
Okay.
same ideas in mind.
Anybody else? Fine, you ready for the vote? The vote is to recommend the 20,355,244. Those in favor signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Let me just write those down, because there's only 8. Dan, Elizabeth, Lisa, Checker,
Sorry.
Philip, Scott, coming around to Jen, and Brian. That is 8. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and abstained. Hank. Motion passes. 8-5-1. So what will show up on the ballot will be to recommend 8-5-1. Opposed were Bill, Guy, Ivan, John, Richard. You're welcome. Okay. All right, let us go through the rest of the warrant articles, which is, hang on for a second. Okay. 13, number 14.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'm gonna read it first. Okay, because what you guys didn't get was the entire thing, and I don't know if this is gonna help or hurt, but it's, for the most part, well, let's put it this way, you guys want me to read the rest of it? The rest of it says something about further raise and appropriate the sum of $21,119, it's just the verbiage of what's gonna happen. I don't think it's necessarily pertinent. But it does say such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels in accordance with the most recent collective bargaining agreement. Lisa?
I just wanna know why we didn't get a copy of that.
It's draft. I was hoping I was gonna get something today that was
I
more.
just got it last night.
Yeah,
So,
Can I ask a question?
hold that.
yeah.
How
Let's
many,
ask questions before we do a motion, how's that?
how many people is this for?
24.
This is
Is it
for,
on?
24.
Okay.
Further questions on draft Article 14? Seeing none, let me get my spreadsheet up, John. John has a motion
Not to recommend.
to not recommend. Is there a second?
I'll second.
That would be Guy. You want to speak to your motion?
I was a big part, well, not a big, I was a voting member, and then also I was on a subcommittee with the county budget. And the county budget was reduced, I think it was by $470. Not much, but the increase, there is no increase. I believe every contract with the unions at the prison, the nursing home, and several other union shops that the county pays for were defeated and no raises were given. I know that at the state level is also, several departments receive no raises. And I know the private sector has been doing it for years, saying, you know, we're sorry, you know, until the economy changes, there's gonna be no raises. So that's why I feel that our local employees here that work for the town should share that same burden as a lot of the other union workers at the county level, in the state level, and private sectors are sharing.
I'm gonna interject one to clarify. Is this a 2-year agreement, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. And Guy, your second?
I'm all set. John pretty much said.
Further questions? Bill?
I don't have a question, I just have a statement.
That's okay.
I can't support an increase in a down economy, and quite frankly, the principle of putting the public sector employees before the taxpayers who pay the bill, to give them a raise from the taxpayers, the tax base that pays the bill, that is so counterintuitive. I can't, there's many other things I could say, but that's not the way it's supposed to work, people. The economy gets going again, the economy gets humming, and then the public sector gets an opportunity to have increases. To have it turned 180 degrees is very ill-advised, and actually puts it puts money ahead of the economy to support it. It's silly, and I can't, especially with people's incomes in this community being cut back in a down economy, in the private sector, most notably, as John said. I can't support this. They may feel like they deserve it, and maybe they should get one someday, but until I get one, they don't get one before me, and so I'm not gonna support this.
Further discussion, Scott?
Yeah, I just, it's not about me, I think this is about Goffstown, and I appreciate that. I just want to clarify a couple of things. This was negotiated whereby the union membership was going to contribute more towards their health insurance. So with any bargaining that goes on, there is, you know, we were able to gain some 10% greater contribution on the health insurance, and in return, the cost of living went up 3.25 for each of the 2 years. Steps are frozen. And the other thing is that these folks did not have a contract last year as well. So just wanted to remind folks of that. Yes, steps are frozen for both years of the contract.
John?
Most places don't have step increases. They have, you get a raise or you don't. So really, to get 2 raises, and they say, okay, you're not gonna get one, but you're still gonna get this raise, it's still a raise. And like I said, most, especially private companies, it's one raise. And I've heard this 10% increase in healthcare. If I'm understanding it correctly, some of the employees, especially on the police side, were paying 0. So yes, if they pay 10% of their health care, yeah, it's a 10%. But they were paying 0. My wife and I, we pay 27.5, and that's cheap compared to what a lot of insurance companies are charging, you know, companies. So, you know, I'm happy to pay 27.5%. So when our employees in town are only paying 10%, you know, yes, that's an increase to them, but it's still, oh my God, it's so low. You know, it should be up to 27, 30% where the rest of the world is. And that's what I just look at is, I wished I brought the article, you know, the paper. Also on the county side, you know, there's no longevity pay, which we have here. The weeks off that you get are capped at 4 weeks. There's just so many benefits that our town employees get that the county does not. And also the state does not. And I just look at that, and that's why I'm not, you know, I'm gonna support, not to recommend. Thank you.
Scott?
Again, I think if you're trying to manage your expenses, you have to start somewhere, and you're correct. Right now, there were employees that, because they were single, that the town was paying all of their health insurance premium. But you gotta start somewhere, and if this does not pass, then we're still paying 100%. And as you know that the healthcare costs keep escalating, you can do the math. I mean, in some cases, the greater health insurance contributions in many cases might offset the salary increases. And with respect, to the county, there are folks who, maybe you're privy to it because you have a spouse who works for the county, and you're a state rep who advocated for a contract for county employees that got defeated. I don't know the specifics of that, but to say that people, the folks that right now that are plowing our roads, salting our roads, who didn't get a raise last year, who are willing to contribute more to their health insurance, shouldn't get a 3.25% increase. and while, steps are being frozen, I think you need to be fair to your employees, and I think this contract and the subsequent contract with the firefighters is a very fair contract. Step in the right direction.
Is there an analysis which gives us the net effect of this contract?
Yes. Well, in terms of the fiscal impact,
Yes.
well, it's in the article. I mean,
That is the net effect.
right.
Okay. Which means that the health insurance that they're kicking in versus the gross appropriation of the health insurance goes down, the wages go up, that's the net effect.
Right, and one thing I want to point out with this particular bargaining unit is this particular bargaining unit in 2011 volunteered to go towards a different health care plan to try to reduce costs, even though they were out of contract. So firefighters union didn't do that, but it's part of the subsequent CBA that I'll discuss shortly. So, but the savings in healthcare is evident.
Further comment, question? Ready for the question? Question, should we not recommend the Article 14 DPW CBA? Those in favor of not recommend, signify by raising your hand, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let me get those down. Dan, Guy, John, Bill, Ivan, Brian?
Right.
And Richard. Those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would be Checker, Elizabeth, Lisa, Philip, Scott, and Hank. Abstain. Jen. Motion passes, and it will show up on the warrant as 761 to not recommend. Article 15, to see if the town of Goffstown will vote and appropriate the cost items for the CBA for the professional firefighters. Before I ask for a motion, I'm gonna ask Scott if he can explain it to us.
Okay, this is, as well, it's a 2-year agreement. There are 13 members, similar to the DPW contract. Steps are frozen in 2012 and 2013. In terms of, there is no fiscal impact in 2012, simply because there was substantial savings in the health insurance. In 2013, the wage impact is $29,645.
Any questions for Scott on this?
You said there was.
Richard?
There was no concession desired on the part of the firefighters to reduce their contribution to health insurance?
No, they did. In 2012. In this contract, they've agreed to do that, and therefore, there's almost an $18,000 cost savings in 2012. What I tried to articulate is that we asked all of our bargaining units to switch to a different plan in 2011. The DPW folks did, so we were able to realize that savings for them, even though they were out of contract. The firefighters' collective bargaining unit did not agree to doing that, but it is reflective in 2012.
So last year they said no, this year
They said yes.
Further questions? Scott,
No,
comments?
oh.
Yeah, further questions, comments? Okay, go ahead, Scott.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend Article 15.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
You want to talk about it?
Yeah, I believe it's a fair contract. You know, one of our desires was to continually seek greater contributions on healthcare, and I think we succeeded in taking a step in that direction. Do I think that there is more room to go on that? Most certainly. We have to take a look at health insurance, all the benefits across the board and wages. But I believe this is a very fair and equitable contract for both the townspeople and for the firefighters in the town.
And Philip? And if I remember correctly, I think you said there was a health savings of 18,000?
Roughly.
Roughly, and so 2 years of 18,000 a year, if this goes through, is $36,000? And the cost of this one is 29,645. But 29,645 in the second year includes the 18,000 already.
Correct.
As does the zero.
Right, the
Right.
zero includes the 18,000. If it doesn't pass, I'm presuming that the appropriation will still have $18,000 into it to pay for, because this is in the,
Actually,
the health insurance savings, Scott, has not been reduced from the appropriation of the operating budget, correct?
correct.
Further question, Philip?
Clarification on that, so if
Yes.
this was to pass, there's 18,000 in the budget that, if this was passed and the operating budget were to pass, choosing my words correctly, there's an extra $18,000 in the budget?
That's the way I understand it.
Thank you.
For the, yes,
If both passed.
yes.
What happens is the savings.
Oh, do I have latitude, Mr. Chair?
Great latitude, without objection from the committee? Okay, Chief?
That was part of the negotiating process. As the savings you gain from the new healthcare that they're getting is then kind of like flipped into their wage and associated lines to pay for that. So in effect, that's why you have the net effect of zero for fiscal year 2012. So you're not gonna see any reductions in a line per se. There may be adjustments, but the bottom line of the budget is gonna stay the same.
Yeah, because you have a
Okay.
roughly a $14,000 wage impact, which is getting offset by the health insurance savings.
Okay, so it's actually a transfer of appropriation?
Right.
Right, finance department may
Right.
get savvy enough
Okay.
to take some money from one line to the other, but the bottom line is.
There's not an extra 18,000.
Yeah.
So
They're
it's a
gonna
net
move
of-
the 18,000 from the benefit line up to the salary line to
Got it.
pay for it. Philip, I still got your hand though, and I see Hank.
Could you read that article again?
Read
please?
it?
Or so,
Yeah, I can read it.
could the chair reread
Oh,
it?
go ahead, Scott. Do you have it? If you don't, I
Yeah,
can.
well, I have it, I'll just read the last night's draft, it'll be easier.
If you have that, that'd
Yep.
be great.
Article 15, to see if the town of Goffstown will vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the town of Goffstown by its Board of Selectmen and the professional firefighters of Goffstown Local 3420 of the International Association of Firefighters representing the firefighters, which calls for the following increases in salary and benefits at the current staffing level. Fiscal year 2012, estimated increase 0. 2013, estimated increase 23,682. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $0 for fiscal year 2012, such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would have been paid at current staffing levels in accordance with the most recent collective bargaining agreement. This appropriation is in addition to Article 13, the operating budget.
Which is 0.
Let me go to John and then over to Hank after.
I was just curious how many employees it was, and then what,
I think he told me 13.
13, and then what is the, raise they're gonna get? Is it, 3, 4%?
3.25, similar
3.25 per year?
for each of the 2 years.
And what is their insurance contribution?
Same thing, what we changed was the single, again, if I can get latitude from the chief, I didn't negotiate this, the chief did.
Objection from the committee? None? Chief?
The big change as far as health benefits goes is they actually they're switching over to the lower priced plan that the rest of the departments that are already keyed into. And then you had the increased contribution from the single user. The dual user and the family user are still contributing the same.
All right.
Which is the 90-10, I believe it was.
So even the family plan is only 10% contribution?
I believe so.
Yes.
Okay,
Just a question on the steps. No steps for these 2 years, right? It's kind of-
Frozen.
The question I have is, at the end of the 2 years, how are the steps picked up again?
Sorry, you might want to stay up here.
well, that would be negotiated in a new CBA, would it not?
Correct, it was mentioned through this process also, and there was talk of redoing a pay matrix if that were to happen in the future. So we don't know where people would land at that point.
Okay. Further questions on the committee? For the moment, until you sit, chief, I think they're good.
No problem.
All right, there is a motion on the floor to recommend this Article 15. So if you're in your favor, it would, and it passes, it will be to recommend. Those in favor of recommend, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and if you would hold, let me get through. I got Elizabeth, Lisa, Checker, Philip, Scott, Hank, get back to the H's, Brian. Yeah, that was 7. Those opposed, let me get you, please. Guy, Richard, John, Ivan, Bill, Dan, abstain. That would be Jen. That passes 7-6, so it'll show recommended 7-6-1. We are at Article 16. Article 16. Scott, could you read us the latest version?
To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $150,000 to the fire apparatus capital reserve fund previously established in 2008. And I'm not sure, did Chief, we change that last night? Did we tweet that? I have to check my notes.
Change the wording of the amount.
I thought no, not the amount. I think we had it, I think our attorney, let me find my.
So we're talking about fire apparatus, 150,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's pretty good.
The attorney wanted like one word inserted.
That's, I think we're good. I think we get the concept. Questions, comments on the committee? John?
I was just curious what's in the fund at this current time.
Good question. Is there anything in the fund right now?
After the purchase of the last truck, I believe it's, I wanna say about maybe $2,000.
Okay, it's little.
Depleted.
Okay. And Chief, how much have we been able to leverage over the last couple of years because we've had a capital reserve fund?
Oh, especially when it came to the Homeland Security grant that we were awarded, it was critical. It was a matter of whether we could accept the grant when it became awarded to us. For example, the ladder truck that we got was just under $1 million, but the federal grant was for $712,000. So with that delta, I guess we call it, in the price, it gives the ability to accept that grant and take advantage of that grant. If not, we'd have to pass on it.
So what did we have left that we were able to do for, what, did we just get an engine?
We just got an engine and we used, I believe it was close to $43,000 towards that engine. And again,
How much was the grant?
the grant was for $712,000.
That was the platform.
The ladder truck, yep.
Was there another one we just got for something else?
We just got a grant for fire sprinklers and diesel exhaust removal systems for 2 stations.
That's the
So
25,000.
That's the $190,000.
190,000.
Yeah, $190,000.
And that's because we had money in the bank? Well,
Money in the bank helps you because
Okay.
this particular grant program, they wanna see the grant program come to fruition. When the award a project, they wanna see it completed to its entirety. If a community says, well, we may or may not be able to fund it on the match end of it, or to complete the program, they may just say, well, just decline it and we'll move on.
Okay. Guy?
Steve, what do we have in this account, if anything, right now?
Couple thousand.
I don't know exactly, but I believe it's about $2,000, maybe,
2,000?
2,000.
Okay.
Bill?
I'm just curious as to, I'm sure there's some math behind it. What's the rationale behind the amount being requested being 150,000?
I requested, I believe, amount double that.
Yes.
And the selectmen had pared it down some, again, to try to make it palatable during this economic times, knowing that there's still a future need for operational equipment. I understand that.
Comparatively, what I've been hearing is almost like a 25-75%, like the match is only 25%?
Well, in reality, what happens in this particular grant program is they'll fund only so much for a certain particular type of vehicle or project. Like, for example, just the one we just got awarded, I had asked for, I believe, $250,000 for the project. They said, we'll give you 200, or 190 was actually federal, and 5% was match. So if your project was fully funded, we would only be responsible for 5%. But there's a lot of negotiating at the end of the award process that occurs. To see, for example, we asked for $1 million for the ladder truck. They said, well, we're only gonna give you $750,000 for the project, which equates with the match, $712,000. But we still wanted to get the project done, we get the truck we would need, and that's where we came up with the cash on hand using the cap reserve fund.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is with 150,000 in the bank, that could lead to how much for a truck? $500,000, $600,000 truck?
Like, the next truck that we're looking at is a forestry. Again, I'm trying to get grants funds for that. So for a 5% match for that type of vehicle could be worth $10,000. And if we have that cash on hand, we can move forward that grant. We expect that grant to be awarded possibly sometime this year. But like, it's a competitive, so keep your fingers crossed.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
If I remember CIP correctly, aren't there trucks in, like, don't we have several that are kind of coming down the pike and like maybe five,
Right.
kind of staggered over the next 5 years?
We have a 30-year vehicle replacement program, where we have an idea when we're gonna need to replace trucks in the future. You're right, there's another engine that's due for replacement somewhere in the 2017 area. And again, we have to prepare for that, and this program is perfect for that.
Further questions? Okay, this one's for Scott. I mean, if, for instance, we voted this as a not recommend, modified it at deliberative session to come down to something that is even more palatable, just to have cash in the bank, I'm hearing 10,000 possibly for a forestry truck or something, given the increase of the tax rate, it's hard for me to support like 150 being on this committee. Personally, I may want to support it, but from the watchdog of the tax rate on this committee, I'm not sure how I could. Has the selectmen had any inquiries or any discussion of something more moderate?
Well, you put me on the spot.
It's all a public thing, it's all a public thing.
It's okay to say no.
We would not object to any modifications.
Right, but it would have to go at deliberative. I'm just wondering if there was a thought
Well,
process
I
of
don't
modifying
know.
prior to posting.
I don't have the authority to do that.
No, you don't. I didn't, the question was,
Yeah.
did you guys talk about it? That's in,
Yeah,
in
well,
your
we talked
public.
about
And you settled.
300,000, we talked
Right.
about nothing, and then we talked about, well, if we applied for a grant for, say, a fire engine, we might need 100 or 125 or $150,000.
That's where I was going.
And not having that, and that's kind of how we arrived at the 150.
Okay.
So-
That's basically what I was asking, is what was the thought process? Philip?
Well, I guess I'm on the same wave as you on that. I'm not sure I can support this amount. I agree with the concept behind having money in the bank. What I'm hearing is the next vehicle that we want to replace, if we can with a grant, is a forestry truck, and then we're talking 5 years down the road, another fire engine, which is what the chief just said. If I understood what he just said correctly, I might have misunderstood. The replacement is in about 5 years, 2017. God knows what a fire truck's gonna cost in 2017. I mean, they're costing $1 million now. So, at this point right now, although I agree with the concept of keeping money in the bank for something like this, because you have to, having applied for grants in the past, you have to have the money in the bank so that you can say, yes, I have the match, or they realistically won't give you the rest of the money. So, I'm gonna have to vote against this one right now, at this amount.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have my CIP with me, but I am almost positive that there is a fire engine that is in the next couple of years, chief. Or there's a significant piece of apparatus in the next couple of years.
Okay.
Not
this year.
What?
Not next year.
The only thing next year is the forestry.
Right.
If we don't get the, if we don't get the grant, then the next, I'm sorry, it's 2014, the next engine. You're correct, Scott.
Right.
2014.
And the, having the money in the bank prior to that helps if someone had some money and they wanted to give it away, even though it's not 2014, and we do it earlier because there's money in the bank, that helps. Again, that's a personal thing of mine, not from what I perceive my job is to wear the hat on this committee. Further questions before I entertain a motion to either recommend or to not recommend? Okay, then I will entertain a motion. Guy,
Motion to not recommend Article 16.
is there a second?
Second.
Was that Phil?
Bill.
That was from that side. Okay. You can tell, I am, speak to your motion. Hey, it's, he's the one that wanted to sit there.
No, there's no need to discuss it any
Bill?
further.
Yes?
Go ahead. All right. This could be a skit. Further, debate, or are you ready for the question? Elizabeth?
I'll just say that, you know, I've written a couple grants for the town that have been successful, and this is a question, this fire apparatus capital reserve fund. I mean, they do ask you that on a lot of grant applications, if you have a capital reserve fund and what the balance of it is. So, I happen to agree with you and Phil, but the balance can't be $2,000. It's gotta be more than that, or they're still gonna say, this isn't worth our time. So somewhere between that, there might be a better balance, but I think it's gotta be more than 2,000 or even 10,000.
Here's my logic. This is a personal comment. I vote for the motion to not recommend. This gets modified at deliberative session to a lower number. The budget committee can then meet again, and I can change my vote to recommend if it's low enough. That's what I'm thinking at this moment. Guy, then I see John.
Ditto.
John?
Ditto.
I see what Elizabeth is saying. And there, I want to vote for, you know, God don't, you know. I wanted to vote for this, but you make an excellent point. So I will agree with you to vote not to recommend, and if the number comes down, then I definitely would recommend it.
It's a long way of saying ditto.
Further debate, discussion?
Just shoot me an email with what you want that number to be, and I'll try to average them out and amend it at the deliberative session.
Okay. Further discussion?
I need feedback, seriously.
I'm looking 75,000.
I was thinking 50.
Those are comments, and they can all be up, and they can made, I mean, Philip, I
50
mean.
was what I was thinking.
That's a
You're ready.
great number. I like that number.
Yeah,
Which
50?
number?
His number.
What was it?
50.
Oh,
I like
50.
50 too.
We heard 50, we heard 75. Philip says,
I like to move the
We just
motion.
bought it.
okay, without accepting that for yet, I think I don't see any hands. We're gonna ask for the question. The question on the floor is, do we vote to not recommend the fire apparatus CRF at 150,000? Those in favor of not recommending signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Opposed? Okay. And abstain? Lisa abstains. Scott and Hank said no. And Dan, Bill, Brian, Checker, Elizabeth, Guy, Ivan, Jen, John, Philip, and Richard said yes, to not recommend. That's 11-1. We are now on Article 17, and it is the CRF for the financial software at 150. Was there any
You know what?
modifications to that?
No, the modification was to put it in parentheses, financial software capital reserve fund. That was all, it's just more wordsmithing. I know not that much about this because this one was discussed at the meeting that I did not attend, and although I spoke to it at the public hearing, it's my understanding that Sue may have spoken to some members of this committee to discuss the notion of creating a capital reserve fund, which would get this thing kind of at least on the right track. And that's really as much as I know about it.
Philip?
I mean, I think the same discussions that we just had in the fire are the same for this. I think I agree with the process behind it, and I mean, I'll say it, I talked to Sue about this, and my thought was at the time to create a capital reserve fund to start putting money in there so that either we can talk to a contractor, because you really can't get a price without something being, they do an estimate for you. So to have that money allows us, I mean, our whole discussion was, well, you don't have a real number, you're guessing a number. Well, you can't get a real number without having some money to get a number. It's a sad situation, so I think a capital reserve fund, if you will, for this process is right. I just think that number is a little too high at this point.
Further questions? Guy?
Just want to say I completely agree with Phil. Let's let this go to deliberative. Let's get a more reasonable, affordable number for now. Give us a chance to look at some options and go from there.
Further?
Another 50. Do I have 75?
Then I'm looking for a motion, Guy?
Motion to not recommend.
And seconded by
Second.
Philip? You want to talk to it?
No, sir.
You want to talk to it?
No, sir.
Does anybody want to talk to it?
No, sir.
Except Scott, who's saying, I need a number.
I gave him a number.
I got a number.
Employ
All right.
somebody for a
You ready for the question? The question is, are you in favor of not recommending the financial software CRF at 150,000? Those in favor of not recommend signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Opposed and abstained. Okay, Scott opposed and Hank abstained. Everybody else said yes. The vote on the warrant will say not recommended, 12-1-1. Article 18 is, we are now at the road program, $1 million. And do we need to get more discussion or explanation on what this is?
No.
Okay, then I would need a motion to either recommend or not recommend. Scott?
Make a motion that we recommend Article 18.
And is there a second?
Second.
Is that Brian? You want to speak to this one, Scott?
I think we talked about it for a
Okay.
while. so.
Yeah, Brian?
We need a road program, and I hope the voters agree. I like the idea of putting it in their hands, but I think we should recommend it.
Okay. Anybody else? Since I was in favor of the original budget, I would find it hard not for me to recommend this. Anybody else? John?
What's the number coming forward, 2 million? Or 1 million?
$1 million,
So as it reads.
as it reads. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate $1 million for Goffstown's road improvement program, blah, 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 to tell the selectmen to put it in the regular budget.
And there's 500,000 in the general budget.
In the, after what we did earlier today, there's 500,000 in the operating budget.
And John, just so you know, I sent an email to Sue right after and copied Dan and Guy, putting it on our agenda to add the comment, add the language that, this is in addition to the $500,000 already in the operating budget for road reclamation.
Yeah, I just got a copy of that, John, so.
I don't read email during a meeting, so, but I
Since
just
you're the
did.
chairman.
I'm too busy watching what's everything hopefully going on. Anybody else? Seeing none, ready for the question. The question is, do you want to recommend the road program special article for $1 million? Those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let me go through this. Recommender, are you in favor of recommending, Elizabeth?
Recommending
The road program for $1 million.
Number 18.
I don't remember what I voted on the other one. Just abstaining.
Okay.
me.
Those
It doesn't,
opposed?
Elizabeth, it doesn't,
1, 2, 3,
this is what
4.
it's gonna be on the ballot.
We're on the
so-
opposed side.
Oh.
Okay, let me get, I think I've got it, in those abstaining.
How many opposed?
I don't know
I
yet.
will abstain.
Okay, ready, guys?
Up our hands out.
Dan, listen, watch. Dan, yes. Bill,
No.
Brian,
Yes.
Checker,
Yes.
Hank,
Yes.
Elizabeth,
Abstain.
Guy,
No.
Ivan,
No.
Jen,
Yes.
John,
No.
Lisa,
Yes.
Philip,
Yes.
Richard,
No.
Scott.
Yes.
Okay, that's, will show on the warrant as recommended 851. 19, Goffstown Main Street Program, $15,000. Do we need to discuss this?
Motion to recommend.
Second.
Too late, Guy. I saw Scott and Philip to recommend. Anybody want to discuss it? Ivan,
I would actually like to make a motion to amend it.
you can't amend it.
We can't.
You can't. It's up or down.
Deliberative you can.
What it is.
At the,
Deliberative.
Deliberative only. Unfortunately, you're one
Wanna
of
raise it,
many.
don't you?
Yeah, I want to bring it up, too.
All right.
that's a no-brainer.
I was joking.
Those further discussions on the recommend for the Main Street program? Seeing none, those in favor of recommending the 15,000 Main Street program signify by raising your hand. I believe that is unanimous. Unless somebody yells, it's unanimous. Okay, Article 20. Article 20 is, see if the town will vote and raise $1,500 for the support of the nonprofit Greater Manchester chapter of American Red Cross. Scott?
This was requested by the American Red Cross to the Board of Selectmen to include it in the operating budget. We declined to do so, but did advise that we would put it on the warrant for voters to decide. And the Board of Selectmen has not taken a position on it. I'm gonna abstain from this one.
Is there any reason why you even wanted to have a, that's just because somebody asked?
For one, the American Red Cross has been instrumental in assisting the community with some of the disasters that we've had over the last 5 years. And we felt that there were a lot of folks in the community who would like to see this on the ballot and for the townspeople to weigh in on it. But we didn't feel it'd be appropriate to include it in the operating budget since it is a nonprofit charitable organization. But so is the Main Street program. And people have supported that, so we felt we'll put it on the warrant for people to either approve or disapprove.
Okay.
Scott, didn't this subject come up a year or two ago? And what was the reason for it? Was it the same thing?
Same thing, they typically
The
put in
floods, they put money in
Yeah,
on
they
the
typically
floods, if I
put in a
remember.
request after a community experiences something.
Okay.
And,
All right, I thought I remembered something
Yeah.
a year or two ago. Okay. Thanks.
Somebody else had their hand up for
Well,
a
I don't
question.
know, but I have a
Lisa?
question. So this is just a one-time
Yeah.
type thing?
They're all one-time
Yeah.
things.
One time every year.
So we would write them a check for $1,500, basically.
correct.
If this passed, yes.
Use as they see fit.
Right.
Not
One of the things
necessarily for Goffstown.
Yeah, as a personal thing, I see the Main Street program that benefits the community as a whole as they do the Main Street projects. I don't see the Red Cross as a community thing that benefits the whole. They are there to help members of the community with a disaster. They do great work. I can write them a check, personally, but I need to be convinced to vote to have taxes that are being raised to give to the organization. That's what I need to be convinced to do.
I guess that's my
Bill?
point is, nobody could deny that American Red Cross helped Goffstown out during the floods, and nobody could deny the intent of the organization. I mean, they do correct me if I'm wrong here, because I get the mail. They do an annual appeal through the United Way, and Goffstown people are free to write a check to support the American Red Cross. That's the appropriate place to do that. I'm not speaking ill of the United Way at all, or the American Red Cross at all. It's just, I don't think a warrant article is an appropriate place for this to happen. This and the next as well, and quite frankly, they should be doing their marketing and appealing to the community at large. We create a situation here where what other nonprofit wouldn't stand in line and try to get this kind of treatment if they could each year? And if it's not the Red Cross next year, it's going to be 3 or 4 others. So I think they should put something in the mail and ask for my donation, is where I think the appropriate place is for this to go.
Guy?
Yeah, I would agree with your last statement. I don't think it's up to us to decide, number one, the taxpayer, you are going to donate, and 2, we're gonna pick the charity. It's American Red Cross. It's not up to us, it's up to them. It just doesn't, and the other thing is, what's to stop everybody else?
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna support it.
I've got John and Lisa.
I agree on the next 2 articles. I had several constituents call me and request a no vote on this, because they said for the same reasons as Bill said. So I will be voting no, not to recommend.
Lisa?
I guess when I first saw this, the first time I heard about this was at the public hearing, and I kind of thought, I thought it was odd, but then I read the Goffstown News, this was last Thursday, about this fire on Elm Street, and it says there's just a little line in here, the Red Cross was called in and is assisting the family with temporary housing. So our community does use the services of the Red Cross. I think $1,500 is a small fee to pay. Not that it's a fee, but it's what you're saying is a one-time kind of donation type thing. I'd be interested to see, how much money has the Red Cross poured into our community, and I don't know if we have that information. But I think, for people who need it when there's an emergency situation, I know the floods, they were instrumental, and I don't know anything else that they have done, but this was in last week's paper. So I would just throw that out there.
Ice storm, that, they were helpful, the ice storm.
And for me, it's not a matter of whether they're helping out the community, it's the method from which, the difference for me for the Main Street program, it's not targeted at an individual, it's targeted at the town programs, the Pumpkin Regard. I mean, we can go over and all the things, it's not saying you, or you. And even though they do great work at the Red Cross, it's you. They're targeting an individual, and I think that needs to be my own decision with my own pocket and my own checkbook.
I guess you could say the same is true of the fire station or the police. I mean, it's you, or you. It's whoever happens to have an emergency or a situation such as that. So, I mean, I that would be my argument back to you.
Okay.
But I mean, you bring up a good point.
Hang on for a second, because I saw Richard's hand up.
When I was in the Army, we had something called the Combined Federal Campaign. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's once a year, the soldiers and civilians who work for the Department of Defense, probably the entire federal government, had the opportunity to donate to specific charities or just generally to charity. And when you do that, it gives you the opportunity for the 11 months of the year when somebody comes pounding at your door, tell them to go pound sand, basically. Because
In uniform?
you choose to give once. And essentially, if the town decides they're gonna give 1,500, perhaps people who live in the town will be influenced to tell charities, go pound sand, I already donated this year through my taxes. And I think it could be detrimental to the to the Red Cross to have people know that they already donated. So if they were gonna donate 10 or 20 or $30 at work or through other means, that they might be less likely. And I don't agree with the principle of supporting a charitable organization through taxpayer dollars like this.
Bill?
I was just gonna bring up a point with Lisa. I mean, whether it's the article on the fire in the building, whether it was helping out during the floods, this all makes a great marketing appeal to do a mailer to the town of Goffstown and say, you know, we've been there during times of need, will you donate? It's a great way to get a community to give more, and you, to your point, Rich, you'd probably get a lot more than $1,500 if a lot of people realize, yeah, they have helped out my neighbors when they were in trouble, so I agree. It's just not the right forum to do this in.
Further? Then I'll be entertaining a motion to either recommend or to not recommend. Guy?
Motion to not recommend.
Second.
That was Philip. Do you want to talk to it?
That was Richard. Haircuts might be similar today, but that was
Ah,
Richard.
Richard.
Like this with your hands.
I heard Richard, I said Philip. I got you guys awake, that's great. To not recommend, okay?
Because the eyes are-
Richard? Anybody else? Ready for the question? The question is to not recommend the Red Cross $1,500. Those in favor of not recommend, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Opposed to the not recommend. Lisa and Hank.
One more vote.
Oh, been me.
No.
And abstained. That would be Elizabeth and Scott and Brian. So it would be Dan, Bill, Checker, Guy, Ivan, Jen, John, Philip, and Richard who said yes to not recommend. That will show on the warrant as 923. Next is Crispin's House. Anybody want to talk about Crispin's House? That's a petitioned article.
Do we vote on petition articles?
22. By the way, we're skipping 21 because it's not a appropriation article. It's something, well, the warrant that I got, 21, was to see if the town will change the classification of a portion of the former Henry Bridge right-of-way extending from blah, 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 blah.
It's not monetary.
There's no appropriation. We don't have to talk about it. So this is Article 22. Anybody need to discuss it? Then I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Is that John?
Yes, it is.
And what is your motion, John?
Not to recommend.
Is there a second to not recommend? Bill? And do you need to speak to it?
I think we covered it on the
Excellent.
the
Bill?
previous.
Good. Anybody else? Seeing none, those in favor of not recommend Crispin House signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me get that, because that's only 6. Dan says yes. That would be Bill, Ivan, John, Richard, and, did I say Guy? No, I didn't. Guy. Opposed? That would be Lisa, Checker, Hank, and Jen, and abstained. That would be Elizabeth, and Philip, and Scott, and Ryan. The warrant will indicate this is not recommend 644. Article 23, milfoil eradication, $2,000. It says annually.
I was gonna ask you about that.
Can they bind
No,
that?
that's gonna be that needs to be amended at the deliberative session.
Okay.
To take away the word annually. 'cause you
Annually?
cannot bind.
So it's just $2,000.
That's correct.
Do you guys remember the discussion that occurred at the public hearing?
Yeah.
Do you need any further?
I'd like to make a motion.
I just make a quick comment.
Go ahead.
on that. I met with the petitioner before he put this petition together. He contacted me. Basically, what he's talking about is $1,000 per lake. He's, besides being a certified diver, he's an instructor. He's also a certified invasive weeds. He's got something from DES, okay? And what he's proposing to do is to come in for $1,000 for Namaski, which just cost us, what, 40 grand? I think, to clear, and come into the Glen Lake for 1,000 with his students, and they will by hand get rid of all the milfoil they find, and then subsequently, they will come back every month over a course of 5 years, and,
Every month?
Every year.
yeah, I'm sorry, every year. Although he's gonna come back once a month during the summer, after the eradications, and check, so basically 3 times each place, and pull whatever else they might find. Apparently, Namaski's starting to get overrun already, and I know Glen Lake was treated for free one time a few years ago, and we've got milfoil over there too. So, when you compare it to the cost of 40, 50,000 that the state would charge to do something like this, this is a wicked deal, you know? So, anyways, I'm gonna support it.
I think the eradication of milfoil would justify the increased valuation of property on the lake.
Yeah, it would. I didn't think of that.
Increased revenue?
You know, I could live across the street and I would support that, just because
Yeah.
these 2 lakes are, you know, they're some of our best natural resources here. But yeah, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing it out.
Just wondering.
John?
I
Further-
certainly could use the
Okay,
increase.
further questions?
You get that?
Comments?
I've heard that argument.
Further questions?
Heard that
I
before.
just have a question. I mean,
Sure.
it just seems like a really low number for a pretty decent sized lake to eradicate, and it just doesn't sound right. I mean, that's,
According to him, it's because he's making money because these are students that he's teaching scuba diving to.
See, what's happening is the students are paying to pull the milfoil.
It's
They're
his
paying-
classroom.
Right.
He's
Yeah.
how can they
renting a
pull all the
classroom.
milfoil by hand? It just sounds kind of impossible.
Well,
Well, it's maintenance, right?
It's
They
maintenance.
did the
Basically.
major pull, now this
Yeah.
is a maintenance
That's on the
Right.
operation.
Yep.
right?
No shovel.
Pull some weeds at my house.
Further discussion?
not at my
Recognize John for a motion?
It will be.
I make a motion to definitely recommend this.
Well, it's only just simply recommend.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Guy seconds. Any, you want to talk to it, John?
I should, and
That
I
means-
hope, no, I'm just saying I should be out on the lake, and I hope someday Guy will give me a ride. I've never been on the lake, to be honest.
Okay.
And it's a shame because it's a beautiful lake.
Just don't go out there with any cinder blocks.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. There's a few people who
Guy?
like that.
I've
I
already
definitely
spoken to.
support it.
Anybody else debate? Brian?
My only debate is, I mean, I don't know anything about this guy, and I don't know if he's just trying to I mean, we're just taking word that you met with this one
I
guy.
should have brought the paperwork and the copies of his certifications that he gave me, but yeah, I have copies of his licenses.
And we're
And
gonna give him, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it just sounds like I'd rather have some kind of proof that he's actually gonna do something versus us paying for him to have a scuba diving class in your lake.
I would doubt the town will pay him before the work is done.
Yeah, but how do we know, how do you monitor, how do you know? I mean,
It doesn't
No.
affect
you know what I mean? It's-
I tell you what, the milfoil was around my house. And I tell you, you know it's there because you could almost walk on it.
Yeah.
When it was there, it was that bad before they took care of it. You could,
Pull it all by hand though?
I don't know what they did, but it's gone. It's just sporadic now. Elizabeth, you've had your hand up for a while.
He does raise a point, though. I mean, the town has a purchasing policy, and I know there are like limits where they have to go out, and I don't know if you know the ins and outs of it, but it's something like you have to get 3 bids if it's over. Isn't it over
5,000.
5? Oh, it's 5,000.
Depends upon the department. What
So
department
I
those
mean,
fall
this would have to fall under the town's purchasing policy.
Not if it's under 5, right?
Depends upon the department. I don't know each department's.
But there is still, there's different levels for the purchasing policy.
Correct.
So the 5,000 one is the big one, but there are other, and so I'm not sure how this works, in other words, with the town's purchasing policy, and if they can just kind of award this to him, or if there has to go
That's
through all these.
kind of not our decision, though. We're being asked to recommend or not recommend.
Well, I would
It's the
rather
combination.
not recommend or not recommend based on whether this is feasible or not.
I think it's feasible, because it's under 5,000, it's a warrant. Philip, what were you gonna say?
It doesn't happen.
You know, just talking about the Red Cross and how it affects not the whole community. Granted, the Glen Lake and the other lake is for the public, however, not everybody, all the public use it. Example in the room, mentioned himself, doesn't use it, so. Plus, I have a hard time, as we mentioned before, you know, how do we prove, what are we getting for this? I mean, unless we see the buckets that he pulls out every time he goes out, and there's some kind of verification that he is doing his job, I believe people on their word. I mean, but it is just, you're asking to put money out there and take his word for it. And quite honestly, if I was scuba diving class and I was paying somebody to teach me how to scuba dive, and they're telling me to go down and pull weeds, I'd have some serious problems with that.
There's another instructor for you.
They actually enjoy it, apparently, according to him, because it's like a treasure hunt to them, the stuff they find. And
my scuba instructor stuck a snail in my
Elizabeth,
mask.
then I have Lisa.
To go back to this again, but I mean, in principle, I think this is a good idea. But I would rather see this kind of go through the usual channels and have the decide, who's gonna, is Public Works gonna supervise this? How is this all gonna, I'd rather have this go through the usual channels of having him go to the selectmen. I don't know if he has been to the selectmen, and have to kind of go through the usual thing. But I support the work, and I support it in principle. I'm just not comfortable with this mechanism for doing this.
Lisa?
Yeah, I had just thought when I first read that, or when I first heard about it at the public hearing, I thought, I just thought about liability. I just thought about all these students underwater with, just under the water pulling up milfoil and getting caught in the milfoil. It's not funny, but I mean, that's what I thought of, and I thought, what a liability. But, and I don't know if all that's been addressed, but I mean, I think it's something to consider.
John?
I guess to go with Elizabeth, what she's saying, I understand what you're saying on the purchasing side, but then really, shouldn't we do that with the Main Street program? Because we're giving somebody $15,000 to do a job, which they do very well, promoting Goffstown, and this gentleman is willing for $2,000 to send him and his friends down there to pick
John,
weeds.
Right there. She gave us a full.
Easy, guys.
Yeah, and I mean, but that's what
Let's
I'm
go to
just saying
debate.
is to the point. And we all voted for Article 19. So I'm just wondering if it's the same thing, to throw that out.
Scott?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it would be the next Board of Selectmen would be the one that makes the decision whether or not this person has the insurance, is a viable business, and would contract with them or not contract with them. Ultimately, this raises the money so that you could do it.
And we can modify the wording at deliberative session without modifying the price. Correct? So it says some things like contract after successful delivery of a insurance bond or stuff like that.
On this
Okay.
article, you could, the moderator, I'm sure, would allow modification of the language and the dollar amount for that matter.
Right.
As in any other.
Okay. Further debate? Philip, no, Bill was first.
I can only tell you that leveraging students and a similar program is done all the time. My son was part of managing a 5-month project up on lakes in the Adirondacks this summer into the fall with a similar thing. So I know it's common, but based on all the questions, I'm walking this back a little bit. I have no idea who brought this article forward. Do we know, was it the person himself who okay, so he put this on and so do we know what department, to your point about the fact it would be administered or managed by a department, do we have a sense of, would it be Public Works? I mean, how do?
Not sure.
So no idea.
Probably Parks and Rec would be the
Yeah.
most reasonable fit, I guess, but I really don't know.
Phil?
If just the wording and not the amount changes at the deliberative session, would we be able to revote our?
I'm gonna check that. I think so. I think if, it's usually we think about the amount.
Right, you're right. Wording.
But I think if
because
any of the wording
the
changes,
wording can make something null and void.
Right.
In some cases.
it
We- we've-
can, but.
No, the to see thing, I understand that, but by just changing a couple of words, you can make something,
Yeah, I would, I,
Fine.
You know, I'm still toying over this because it personally affects me, and I'm having a hard time segregating my personal want to have the milfoil out for what is in the best interest. And that is why I am trying to compare this, and I'm comparing it much better with the Main Street program than I am with anything else. That's my justification if I do end up voting on something. I think I saw Jen's hand, and then, boy, we're really going over. I'm down to 12% on my battery, okay? So let's,
Wrap it up.
I'll be real quick.
Jen.
I don't see this as comparing with the Main Street program. Main Street program also creates an economic development aspect that I don't see that this would, people would bring boats to the lake and boat on the lake. Maybe, I suppose they might be creating the economic aspect as they gas their boats up before they get to the lake or once they leave the lake, but, I don't see the comparison with the Main Street program that just generates townwide, year-long, community building programs.
was it Elizabeth?
Yeah,
had her hand
I
up?
don't see the relation to the Main Street program either. I mean, Main Street is as a nonprofit organization, which I believe has ties to the state. I think the state has sanctioned the Main Street programs. And this just feels a little bit too much like putting a warrant article to get yourself a job.
And I think Bill
Okay.
and, did you have your hand up too, Philip?
I did.
Okay.
I don't see
yeah.
that, I don't see that part of it, but I'll just finish this off by saying there's probably no amount of words that could be stuffed into a warrant article that would replace the more optimal thing, which would be the actual guy coming and speaking to it,
Which you'll be doing, I guess.
which he'll be doing, and which would have been good to have all that information here to make a decision, of course, but in lieu of that, I don't know what that means about a vote, but it means that it would make sense for him to come to make an appeal and be very detailed to answer every single question we just heard, because there's a lot of questions here that can't be answered.
Were you gonna make a motion if I call on you?
Yes.
Okay, hang on for a second. John, you have one quick last thing?
Yeah, I just wanted to say,
He still would have had a chance.
if it cost $40,000 last time, and if this guy can just go down underwater and pull a bunch of weeds and hopefully eliminate that, and he's gonna have to come back next year for the same warrant article, and if he doesn't do a good job, then we don't approve it then. So we lost $2,000 for, I feel, something that could save us a lot of money down the road, and it does bring economic.
Okay, we done? Perfect. So, are you ready for the question? The question is, do we vote to recommend the $2,000 for the milfoil eradication? Those in favor of to recommend, please signify by raising your hand. Guy, Hank, John, Bill, and Ivan. No. Please raise your hand. Elizabeth. Lisa. Brian. Checker. Philip. Jen. And abstained. Scott, Richard, and Dan. Milfoil eradicate to recommend does not pass 5-6. The only other thing we can do is I need a motion then to not recommend.
I make a motion to not recommend.
Motion made by Philip, seconded by,
Oh, me, second.
you sure? I wanted to see what would happen if we don't. Do we need to discuss this?
God help us, no.
He gets me.
Okay, milfoil eradication is to not recommend. Those in favor of not recommend, please signify by raising your hand. That would be Elizabeth, Lisa, Checker, Philip, Jen, Brian. Those opposed to not recommend? That would be John, Guy, Bill, and Ivan. Those abstaining? Dan, Hank, Richard, and Scott. The warrant will say to not recommend 644. We are done the articles. I'll entertain a motion to restrict reconsideration of all motions on the town warrant at this point.
So moved.
Scott, seconded by Philip. Those in favor of sticking with all the votes we took, please, we're not done yet, don't even think about it. Those in favor of restricting reconsideration, please signify by raising your hand. Is that unanimous? No. Those no, that's John. Okay. So we are done at that point, that is 13-1. If you look at your agendas, I'm going to skip number 8. We're gonna pass off the approving of the meeting minutes till the next meeting, which we'll decide in a moment. School board meeting schedule, next Monday.
It's actually the 23rd. You have it here as the 26th. but
Then you're gonna be late.
23rd, I mean, as long as it's the 23rd, I can go.
Okay,
The 23rd,
I must have been looking at a different month.
Okay.
last year.
I can't do any Mondays anymore.
Okay,
Sorry.
so the thing is, who else is in? I will do February 6th, because they're only gonna meet for a few minutes, I'm sure, before the deliberative session. So I'll just go to that one, you guys don't have to worry about it. The problem now is, terms are expiring, okay, for Dan, Guy, Bill Checker, Brian, and Richard. Many of the individuals that are on the school side, terms are expiring. If they either don't run, don't get reelected, but go to the meeting, you've got no report anyway, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to send them. The only ones left then are, I guess, Lisa and Elizabeth.
So it looks like I'm going.
And John. John. The reason is John tried to pick up a few extra, I don't know if you were
pick up a few,
successful.
yes.
What about Ivan?
Ivan's up, isn't he?
He's in high
Ivan,
school, isn't he?
oh yeah, Ivan.
Oh.
Ivan!
But
Which
Ivan on
date?
the
Which one you wanna pick? You wanna pick February 20th?
The 20th.
Sorry,
No,
Ivan.
you got the 20th.
Nice, rope 'em
Don't
in.
speak.
Throw him under the bus.
Nice.
Somehow I thought I had you on, you're not. Okay, so, you guys can,
Can I interrupt, can I take the 20th, because the 19th is, I can't do, sorry.
you can't do March 19th?
I cannot do March 19th, I can do the 5th.
Can you do March 19th, Ivan?
It's my son's birthday.
Tell you what, we don't have to worry about that until the February meeting. So let's talk about, so who is gonna do, Checker, you're gonna do the 23rd?
Yeah.
And who's gonna do the 20th of February?
Ivan.
Okay.
Good job,
You take it
Ivan.
then, sorry.
You ready to, you wanna take that one, Ivan?
Okay.
Okay, and then and Lisa is on the 5th of March anyway, right? Okay, let's stick to that for the moment. The candidate filing period, if you so desire, is Wednesday, January 25th through Friday, February 3rd, okay? If you come in on Friday, the new law says that you must do it in person, okay? And the clerk's office must be open at least between the hours of 4 and 5 on that Friday. Okay, so they can't close until 5 o'clock. Now, is the school district clerk in the room? How, are you accepting is someone doing that on your behalf, or
Kathy does it, yeah.
Catherine Fisher?
No.
Oh, Kathy Ball.
Yeah, she does
Okay,
all of them.
so, but if someone got it into your hands, it would still be official anyway?
Correct.
Okay. So, as the school district clerk versus the town clerk, when is the school deliberative session?
Saturday something or other.
Saturday the 4th,
Saturday the 4th, at what time?
10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Free babysitting.
When is the, and by the way, I don't know if and when there is a snow date. It didn't show on the warrant.
I think it's the following week.
Is it, I thought it was the following, I thought it was the same day as the town might pick too.
Yes, the snow day.
But we'll worry about that. When is the town deliberative session?
the Monday, and I'm not sure the date, the time though.
The 6th is at 7, according to the warrant.
Okay, there was some discussion about making it earlier, but.
Oh, it could be, but we'll wait for the warrant to come out. Right now, it was there.
Is there
Okay,
babysitting?
guys, the last thing we need kind of do is figure out when do you want to meet in February? And because there's a reason for that.
Yeah, why isn't there babysitting?
You're right. What?
Supply some babysitting.
Excuse me?
Supply some babysitting.
John, we'll do it. Ivan. Ivan.
Moving on.
You could do like a chainsaw demonstration.
Why are we meeting in February?
Yeah,
Come here, kids.
I'll babysit, yeah.
Come a little closer.
They
used to, why'd you
Yeah,
stop?
yeah, I'll put them right out there.
I want younger people to
Give them all a
come.
ride on the tractor.
Is there some law that says I lose
I will be
control
more
of the
than
meeting
happy to delay
after?
that.
Volunteers.
Where is my calendar?
Student, you know, usually the student council or honor society does it.
FBLA, somebody.
Am I wrong?
Okay.
I think I'm right.
Little wheel in it.
February, okay, when do you guys want to meet in February? It's funny. Lions Club, has the candidate night been
Yes.
chosen? Do you know what day it is?
I think
It's-
21st.
The third Tuesday is the 21st, and it's usually the same
Yep,
day as
yep,
the
it
budget
is.
committee
That's it.
meets. And I thought maybe we might not want to meet on that night.
That was the night.
I agree.
Okay, so, we
motion.
have been meeting on the second Wednesday,
Nah.
but it could be. Now, here's the funny part, because the first Wednesday is the number 1, the second Wednesday is the 8th, the third Wednesday is the 15th, when do you guys want to meet? The election is Tuesday, March 13th, we'll get that after, so it's after. But do you really want to meet in the same week as the deliberative session, 2 days after or a day before the snow date of the deliberative session? So, do we,
So you're saying you'd like to go the 15th?
it's all coming out in the question.
Your-
Look at your dates.
your proposed
I
date
am
is the 15th.
proposing we either meet on the 14th or the 15th
Oh,
of
the 14th
February.
is not good.
On Valentine's
Not
Day?
good.
I am
Definitely
proposing
a fight or
we
not a
do
lover.
not meet on the 14th. It didn't make
Get us
sense
all in
until I read it,
trouble.
okay, guys? I already bought a little present, so.
I can be out of
Anyway,
the house.
I'm covered.
For us?
No,
He's in the budget committee. I didn't see that present.
okay. Do you guys want to meet on the Wednesday, the 15th?
More
That's fine.
samplers probably.
I will see where we will meet.
That's the day after the election, right?
No,
No.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
that's,
Election is
that's
in
the day
March.
after Valentine's
Yeah,
Day.
yeah, okay.
I know.
So we will meet in February 15th. Now, it's kind of late to discuss this, but traditionally, this group has not met in March until the Tuesday or the week after the elections. There's a reason for that, that has been. The reason has been is if you get elected, okay, you cannot take the oath of office until at least 5 PM on the Friday following the election because of the statutory time you have to wait for the potential of a recount request, which is Friday at 5 o'clock. So, if we met, if you wanted to meet, because we've been meeting on the second Wednesday, it would be the day after the election. This body sitting here would still meet,
No,
even though
let's
it's the
not do
day
that.
after the election. Doesn't make sense. But I want to get it set now, so anybody who's running, so do you guys want to, when do you guys want to meet who are in March? Do you want to meet on the third Tuesday, the 20th? Or do you want to meet on a Wednesday? When do you want to meet?
As long as it's not the 17th, I don't care.
Just pick a date in.
I may not be here, so it's not up to me.
Yeah, me too.
My term is ending.
I'll definitely be here. Who's gonna be here?
You'll be the chair.
Whoever gets elected.
For sure, it'd be everybody else sitting here except for every elected, who's elected here?
Say who will be
Whose terms are up? Put your hand down.
Whose terms are
I'm
up?
elected.
Put your hands down.
You're in charge. You're in charge.
Elizabeth, Lisa, Philip, and John.
And
And
Ivan.
Ivan.
He always
And Ivan.
skates, this guy.
Those, you five are the only ones that are,
21st.
There you go. I nominate
guaranteed.
Ivan.
The
Chair.
21st,
which is the third Wednesday.
yes.
You guys good with that?
All right.
21st of March?
Someone's gonna make it.
Yeah.
Let's just make.
I will check with Catherine to make sure those are available. Okay, and I'll get back to you. The next time we will meet is on Saturday, February 4th. Now, be prepared. If any of the articles with appropriation are modified, we will meet someplace there, okay? Usually by the end of the meeting, the moderator allows me to say the budget committee will be meeting. So I already posted that we will meet. If nothing is modified, we will not meet. There's no need to meet. There's no need to meet just to say we're not meeting.
7
okay?
p.m.?
And I will make that announcement as well.
Oh, 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
It's 10 o'clock on Saturday, February 4th. It's in the gymnasium of the school. That's what it was on the warrant last time I saw it. The following Monday, the 6th, currently 7 p.m. in that same gymnasium. Okay?
Dan, I will be out of the country, February 1st to the 9th. I'll be missing both.
Okay.
I will too. Not be out of the country, but I'll be missing both because I'll be out of town.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I have the 8th for some reason, Budget Committee. But is that's gone?
That's gone now.
Okay.
The 8th was because it was the second Wednesday of the month.
No, March.
That's why I wanted to bring it up today, because it just didn't make any sense to do it that week, so we are gonna skip to the third Wednesday, the 15th.
15, okay, so I've taken it out of my computer.
Yes. We will all go through the meeting minutes
grab
at
mine?
our Wednesday, February 15th meeting. We have to. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I got that. Jen, Scott, all those in favor signify by raising your hand. Opposed? That's so voted.
Hey, Dan.
Thank you, we are done.